Chapter 21:33. The ink-like darkness that covered the sky of the primordial world began to recede like a tide after Di Ming was defeated. The destructive aura that was oppressive like doomsday and terrified all living beings also gradually dissipated. Is it over? Great, this isn't the end of the world. It was too scary just now. I really don't know what kind of terrifying disaster it was. Fortunately, it's over, but what exactly happened just now? An uproar resounded in the 49 prefectures of the primordial world. Countless people felt a lingering fear in their hearts, but they also felt lucky and felt like they had survived a disaster. It's over. Di Ming was killed by Mount Heart's first disciple, the Battle Emperor. The forbidden power of order that covered the heavens has lost its controller. Doesn't this mean that Mount Fengxuan has won this all-encompassing chess match? No, how could Di Ming be defeated? He's a supreme existence that's like the incarnation of heavenly punishment. In the Heaven and Earth Tao Court, the Universe Tao Court, the Chaos Tao Court, the Panwu Tao Court, and other enormous forces, a great uproar arose at this moment. Countless exclamations and voices of disbelief resounded. Sovereign Nameless was killed? This was absolutely the most sensational event in the history of the Starry Sky Ancient Path, and it was enough to affect the entire world. On the other hand, the terrifying strength revealed by Mount Innerheart in this chess match that covered the sky caused all these colossi to tremble and feel extremely cold in their hearts. Di Ming killed martial emperors like cutting grass, and killed martial emperors like slaughtering chickens and monkeys. Even Di Ming, who represented the supreme, forbidden power, had died because of this. This was too terrifying. So much so that no one dared to believe it. It should be known that since the primeval times, two great disasters had erupted on the Starry Sky Ancient Path that affected the heavens. One was the 10 Directions Tao War in the primeval times, and the other was the Tao War of all martial emperors in the primeval times. Di Ming's shadow was present in every battle. He was like a shadow that had covered the starry sky for countless years, and no power or expert had ever been able to shake him in the slightest. But today, such a supreme existence that seemed to exist eternally lost. Such a shocking change was like the sky had collapsed. The death of venerable Emperor Wu Ming seems to have caused an unprecedented change. There were also some seniors that possessed extraordinary cultivation that acutely noticed that the energy of order that covered the universe had undergone a completely new change. A chance to head to the other side of the starry skies. Some of them instantly guessed the truth, and unprecedented excitement surged in their hearts. Ha! So that's how it is. For countless years, the Forbidden Order force has shrouded the world and blocked the way to the other side of the starry sky. Now that the nameless sovereign is dead, the Forbidden Order force has not dissipated, but the blocked way has reappeared. In that case, we have to thank the Battle Emperor. If he hadn't risked his life to kill the nameless emperor, we wouldn't have been able to seize such a great opportunity. It's time for me to head to the other side of the starry sky. I heard that only at the other side of the starry sky exists the path of eternal immortality. For a time, it was unknown how many figures rushed out from the all-heavens where no one could pay attention to and into the depths of the Zhou void. Practically all of these figures were seniors that had lived in seclusion for countless years, and they possessed extraordinary resources and reserves in the Emperor realm. After the unexpected change occurred in the Forbidden Order force, they'd noticed the opportunity at the first possible moment, and they hadn't hesitated to take action. It was even to the extent that some imperial emperors had emerged from their closed-door cultivation and taken action. The other side of the starry sky. In the eyes of existences like them, the meaning represented by these words was far from something that the cultivators of the world could understand. According to legend, if one wanted to attain eternity, then one had to seek it from the other side of the starry sky. According to legend, there were supreme existences that controlled the laws of time and destiny on the other side of the starry sky, and they were taken to be the true overlords of the Grand Tao. According to legend, since the very beginning of the primeval times, the rumors related to the other side of the starry sky were filled with inconceivable colors, and it caused one's imagination to run wild and yearn for it. On the other hand, it was impossible for the seniors at the Imperial Emperor realm to break through to a higher realm in the ancient path of the starry sky. Only by arriving at the other side of the starry sky would they be able to advance a level. However, in the past, the Forbidden Order force was like a shackle that sealed off the path to the other side, causing no one in the world to be able to arrive there. So, many people couldn't help but wonder if this path had been severed a long time ago. But today they'd seen hope. If one looked at the entire starry sky of the ancient Tao heavens, they would discover that in different starfields, different great worlds, different secret realms, different places, today, one terrifying figure after another walked out, rushing into the heavens. Some ancient clans suddenly noticed that the seniors that they'd taken to have passed on were actually walking out of their closed-door cultivation with wild joy on their faces, and then they hastily said, "I'm going," before teleporting into the sky. It was even to the extent that the ancestors of some great sects that had been buried within their cemeteries had emerged from their coffins, and they roared with laughter as they soared into the sky, causing countless disciples to be horrified. Obviously, those ancestors hadn't really passed on. In short, the ancient path in the starry sky today could be described as bustling and stirring. Countless imperial ancestors and great emperors were moving out, and they were dazzling like the rain. Countless living beings were shocked by this scene and were flabbergasted. In the records of the later generations, this day was called the day the emperors set out. Cloud Mountain. The eldest senior brother, Li Xianwei, and the other successors of Mountain of Mind and Heart returned one after another and gathered together. With their cultivation, they naturally noticed the unusual movements that had taken place in all the heavens, and they couldn't help but sneer. Jun Huan sneered. When dealing with the nameless Supreme Emperor, these old guys all disappeared without a trace. But when the opportunity to go to the other side of the starry sky appeared, they all ran away faster than rabbit. Shuya laughed. Let them deal with the nameless Supreme Emperor? That's worse than killing them. Li Xianwei commented seriously. As long as they don't become slaves to the nameless Supreme Emperor like Qiankuan, Untainted Land, and Panwu Taoist court forces, it's already not bad. Hearing this, everyone couldn't help but laugh. This jade slip records some things related to your mother, Luo Qingxuan and Lu Boya. On the other side, Du So and the old priest called Lin Sun to their side, and Du So handed a jade slip to Lin Sun. However, don't hold too much hope. To protect your mother, Lu Boya hid many secrets. The things recorded in this jade slip are just some of what we've seen. You can read it after we leave. Du So exhorted. Holding the jade slip in his palm, Lin Sun took a deep breath and suppressed the urge to read it now. He said, "Thank you for your help, seniors." The old priest next to him said with kind eyes, "Do you remember some visions I once divined for you? In the future, you must be careful on this starry ancient road. If you can't beat them, just run away. It's not shameful." Lin Sun nodded. Of course, he remembered those visions, but he never paid much attention to them. After all, he was never a person who believed in fate. "My little friend, I'm going to take Xiaochong with me this time. In case she's too sad, I won't let her see you." Xia Xinglia came from a distance, and his words made Lin Sun speechless. He thought for a moment and said, "Then please tell Xiaochong that when I go to the other side of the starry sky, I'll go to her and express my gratitude to her in person." How could he not know that in this game of chess, Xia Xinglia, the extreme demon sword emperor, took such a great risk and resolutely chose to help him? In this, Xia Xiaochong's role was indispensable. As soon as Xia Xinglia heard that Lin Sun would look for his daughter in the future, he was worried that his precious daughter would be harmed by this boy. Fortunately, to Xia Xinglia's slight comfort, Lin Sun didn't know how long he would have to wait to see his daughter in the future. Junior brother. Ruosu Li Xianwei, Xuya, Pujin, Qi Jun, Qingyu, Moon in the Well and other descendants of Mountain of Mind and Heart all came over and said goodbye to Lin Sun one by one. Lin Sun didn't know when they would meet again, which made him feel a little sad, but he quietly buried it in his heart and said goodbye to his senior brothers and sisters with a smile. This is what Golden Cicada asked me to give you before he left. The eldest senior brother also came over. Although he was close at hand, Lin Sun couldn't see his face clearly. He could only feel a sense of unruliness and fighting spirit coming from him. The eldest senior brother handed a jade letter to Lin Sun, patted him on the shoulder and said, "The way of fighting is all about making breakthroughs between life and death. Junior brother, you have embarked on your own way. I look forward to the day when you can fight side by side with us." Lin Sun felt a sense of pride and said, "Eldest senior brother, senior brothers and sisters, just wait and see." The eldest senior brother nodded, turned around and waved his hand, "Let's go." The youngest junior brother was no longer a child, and this parting was not a real separation of life and death. Even if they said thousands of words, it would seem pretentious. Ruosu and others understood this, so did Lin Sun. However, when the moment of parting really came, Lin Sun still couldn't help but feel a little reluctant and a little disappointed. It was not easy for him to reunite with his senior brothers and sisters, and now he had to leave in a hurry. The world seemed to be so unpredictable. Whoosh! The figure of the eldest senior brother broke through the air. Then the other descendants of Mountain of Mind and Heart followed closely behind. Xia Xinglie and Ji Xian, the Thunder Emperor of Silence, were also among them. They would also go to the other side of the starry sky with the descendants of Mountain of Mind and Heart. Lin Sun stood alone in the field, watching those familiar figures break through the sky one by one. He kept waving his hand, with a smile on his face from beginning to end. But in his heart, he still felt a little empty. Suddenly, the gentle and soft voice of Ruosu sounded in Lin Sun's heart like a gurgling spring. Chapter 2134. Second Senior Fellow Apprentice. Lin Sun was stunned and lost in thought. Sister Ruosu's words clearly meant that the second senior fellow apprentice, who had not shown up so far, was in the dark world. What kind of person is the second senior fellow apprentice? Lin Sun couldn't help but wonder. In the sky, the figures of those senior fellow apprentices of Mount Heart could no longer be seen. Du So and the old priest had also left one after another. Lin Sun was the only one left in this ruined world that had long been turned into ruins. Senior Thousand Feather Sword Flower, I've fulfilled your request for you. Lin Sun breathed a long sigh of relief. When he was at the Great Wall of the Imperial Pass, Thousand Feather Sword Flower gave Lin Sun a bamboo sword of Tingshu and asked him to give it to Shuya. Just now, Lin Sun had already handed the sword to Shuya. When the latter saw the sword, he was slightly stunned and couldn't help laughing. That little sword flower is still thinking about it. She is affectionate and loyal. I didn't help her to open her spiritual wisdom in vain. Lin Sun also laughed at that time. This was good karma. One cause and one effect, nothing more. After a long time, Lin Sun turned and left alone. He still clearly remembered that the young man with golden cicada said that the nameless supreme sovereign was defeated, but the origin of the taboo order was still there. Sooner or later, another nameless supreme sovereign would appear. At that time, the starry sky ancient road would be shrouded in the shadow of the taboo order again. But Lin Sun was not afraid. After witnessing the fighting style of the eldest senior fellow apprentice and the unparalleled means that the young man with golden cicada inadvertently showed, Lin Sun became more and more convinced of one thing: as long as he was strong enough, the power of the taboo order could also be defeated. It was a dilapidated and barren abandoned star area. Get ready. We should go. The young man with golden cicada and burning immortal Chun Linkong appeared out of thin air. The former looked at the beautiful girl transformed by the white cicada. The girl looked annoyed. How many times have I told you? Don't call me by when there are outsiders. Okay, bye. The young man with golden cicada said casually. The girl was so angry that she wanted to rush up and beat the young man with golden cicada. Chun Linkong laughed heartily and asked, "Should we call the others?" The young man with the golden cicada looked at the depths of the desolate star region. After a while, he laughed and said, "I'm afraid it's impossible. Those who can leave the ancient wasteland battle union have already taken action." Chun Linkong sensed for a moment and couldn't help but be speechless. In my opinion, those who haven't left probably don't intend to leave either. The golden cicada youth nodded and said, "You've already proven your Tao and become a martial emperor. You still can't let go of trivial matters. There's no need to force it." "That's not right." He frowned. "Why did the golden crow Tharch choose to stay?" Abai said casually, "I heard that someone cut down the Fusang tree in the Sunset Tang Valley in the ancient Desolation Realm. The old thing was so angry that he became obsessed and swore to take revenge. Although he is in closed-door cultivation now, he will definitely go there to take revenge when he finishes." The golden cicada youth nodded and asked, "Where's Fei Lan?" Fei Lan was the horrible creature in the mulberry forest whose body was a bloody moth. He was a life-and-death friend of Tian Ke, the owner of the insignificant spiritual bow. Back in the mulberry forest, he had helped Lin Sun kill the enemy. "He left," Abai said. The golden cicada youth was silent for a while. Tian Ke, the owner of the insignificant spiritual bow, was a peerless hero that even the golden cicada admired very much. But a long time ago, he encountered a fatal ambush and was killed by the golden crow Tharch. Now the insignificant spiritual bow fell into the hands of Lin Sun, and its spirit Wu Ke escaped from the Sunset Tang Valley. Without guessing, the golden cicada youth knew that the matter of saving Wu Ke and cutting down the Fusang tree must have something to do with Lin Sun. The Fusang tree is the lifeblood of the golden crow bloodline, but it was cut down by that boy. No wonder the golden crow Tharch was so angry that he didn't even want to go to the other side of the starry sky. I'm afraid this blood feud will be caused by this boy again. Thinking of this, the golden cicada youth shook his head for a while. He had no intention of intervening in this matter. Perhaps the descendants of the Fangtsuan mountain had left, but how could they not leave some tricks on the starry ancient path? If the golden crow Tharch thought that this boy could be bullied, he was very wrong. "Let's go." Not long after, golden cicada, white cicada, and Chun Linkong disappeared together. And in the depths of this abandoned star region, there was a boiling lava lake across the starry sky. The nearby stars were all burning, and the flames were tens of thousands of feet high. In the depths of the lava lake, the law of fire was as thick as a python, wandering around a golden-robed elder. He sat cross-legged and meditated. As he breathed, his body and mind seemed to have turned into a vast world, and the world was full of terrifying scenes of monstrous flames. The golden crow Tharch, a veteran of the ancient Wasteland Battle Alliance, a cold-blooded and ruthless peerless hero who had killed countless people. When the figures of golden cicada and Chun Linkong left, the golden crow Tharch, who was in seclusion, suddenly opened his eyes. At that moment, it was as if a pair of scorching suns had risen in his eyes. "All these years, if it weren't for you, golden cicada, I would have already killed my way out of this place and conquered the starry sky. I wouldn't have been trapped here when my Fusang tree was cut down by a thief." His eyes were surging with terrifying flames, and he was so terrifying that he wanted to devour someone. "Now you've finally left, boom!" The golden crow Tharch stood up, and the huge lava lake that spanned across the starry sky was suddenly swallowed by his body. He was like a great Zhou-void sun, shining brightly and illuminating this abandoned and desolate star region. This old fellow finally can't hold back anymore. The Fusang tree is one of the 4 most amazing divine trees since ancient times. It's also the source of the golden crow lineage. Now that it's been destroyed, how can the golden crow Tharch not be angry? In the dark, streams of mental energy appeared one after another, sensing the golden crow Thiarka's actions. Are you all here to watch me die? Suddenly, the golden crow Tharch spoke coldly, and his voice reverberated throughout this star region. Instantly, the mental energy that was conversing disappeared, and everyone kept quiet out of fear. Swoosh! In the next moment, the golden crow Tharch took action. However, before he could leave this abandoned star region, there was a loud thud. The golden crow Tharch felt a sharp pain at the back of his head, as if someone had slapped him. His body swayed, and his vision turned black. Who is it? He roared angrily, and his body emitted divine flame laws that seemed to burn the sky. One could vaguely see the image of a three-legged golden crow that covered the starry sky. Its power was terrifying and boundless. You are not allowed to leave this place for the next 100 years. A faintly discernible and ethereal voice sounded. The golden crow Tharch was shocked. Given his cultivation level, he actually couldn't locate the owner of this voice. This could only prove that the other party's cultivation level was far above his. For a moment, the golden crow Thiarka's expression was uncertain, and he was so depressed that he almost vomited blood. He had finally endured until the golden cicada left, but who would have thought that he would be defeated just as he was about to leave? Did you hear me clearly? The ethereal voice rang out once more. The golden crow Tharch fell silent. How could he be willing to lower his head like this? Bang! The back of his head was slapped again, and he saw stars. He was a Tharch and a formidable figure, but now, he was like a child being taught a lesson by an elder. This made his face turn red, and his heart was filled with shame. This was simply too much. Who are you? Do you dare to come out and fight? The golden crow Thiarka's roar shook the starry sky. What answered him was a fair, slender hand that stretched across the boundless starry sky. Every finger seemed to be able to break through the void and was unimaginably large. The golden crow Tharch didn't even have time to dodge. He was grabbed by the large hand like a bug and thrown into the deepest part of this abandoned starry sky. Boom! A rain of light formed by the power of countless laws of order appeared and turned into a huge mountain that suppressed the golden crow Tharch. Only at this moment did the golden crow Tharch feel an unprecedented fear. His opponent was too powerful, so powerful that he didn't even have the chance to resist. I once swore that I wouldn't kill anyone from the ancient desolate battle union. Old golden crow, you will be able to escape in 100 years. Take care. That voice completely disappeared at this point. Meanwhile, the golden crow Tharch, who had come out of seclusion aggressively and wanted to embark on the path of revenge, was directly suppressed before he could even leave. Some of the willpower that witnessed this scene in the dark were all in a daze. The golden crow Tharch was a powerful figure, but he was suppressed just like that? How could it be you? At this moment, the golden crow Tharch seemed to have thought of something and revealed a look of disbelief. The person who had once swore not to kill anyone from the ancient desolate battle union was that golden cicada. However, why was his cultivation level so terrifying? Who exactly was he? The golden crow Thiarka's heart was in turmoil. He knew the golden cicada. In these countless years, the person he couldn't see through the most was the golden cicada that liked to chat the most. However, the golden crow Tharch had never thought that this inconspicuous golden cicada would actually be so terrifying. At the same time, on a path that was separated by countless voids, the golden cicada smiled and said, 100 years should be enough. Chun Linkong, who was beside him, said, You still couldn't help but attack. A long time ago, I once listened to the Tao on the Fangtsuan mountain for 30 years before I completely comprehended the Tao. The master of the Fangtsuan mountain said that my Tao is higher than the heavens, but to me, the master of the Fangtsuan mountain's kindness is greater than the heavens. At the end of the day, the current me is still inferior to him. The golden cicada sighed. The Tao is higher than the heavens? How could it be greater than the master of the Fangtsuan Mountain's kindness? Qin Linkong asked, How high do you think the master of the Fangtsuan Mountain is? Higher than what you and I imagined. As the golden cicada spoke, it took another step forward. Qin Linkong was stunned, and a trace of shock flashed across his eyes. In his imagination, he had already regarded the master of the Fangtsuan Mountain as an extremely high existence. If the master of the Fangtsuan Mountain was even higher than what he had imagined, what kind of realm was he at? At the same time, on the other side of the ancient path that had been cut off for countless years, in front of a huge palace surrounded by immortal qi. A cry of surprise rang out, breaking the silence that had existed since ancient times. Something big has happened in the cosmos. Chapter 2135. The palace was shrouded in celestial mist, and it was sacred like a place where gods resided. It was extremely huge, and rivers of stars flowed around the palace. A bronze pillar stood in the huge square in front of the palace. It was engraved with dense Tao patterns and strands of the forbidden law of order. It was mysterious and ancient. The one that let out a cry of alarm was a fiery red vermilion bird. It had been cultivating and guarding this place for countless years. But today, the strands of the forbidden law on the bronze pillar were dispersing, and it seemed to have lost its rhythm of life. It was lifeless. This could only mean that the existence that controlled the forbidden law on the other side of the starry sky might have met with disaster. Evil creature, what are you shouting for? A loud shout resounded, and along with the voice, a 3-meter-tall figure appeared out of thin air. It was a young man with eyes as deep as an abyss. His skin was fair, and his body glowed with rippling profound light of the great Tao. Beneath his feet were strands of clouds formed from lightning of order, causing him to seem like a valiant saint in the heavens. The vermilion bird was a miraculous divine bird, and it was as rare as a legend on the ancient path of the starry sky. But in front of this young man, the vermilion bird trembled with fear and prostrated on the ground. Your Honor, the Forbidden World Pillar has undergone a shocking change. The Lord that controls the forbidden law on the other side of the starry sky might have met with disaster. Swoosh! The young man's eyes instantly locked onto the bronze pillar like lightning. This was the Forbidden World Pillar. As long as this pillar didn't fall, the forbidden law wouldn't dry up. In just an instant, the young man's pupils constricted, and he revealed a look of surprise. There's someone in such a low-end and declining place who can defeat the 9th great uncle who controls the thunder forbidden law? Thinking of this, the young man's figure flashed and he rushed into the distant palace. What? Someone defeated the 9th great uncle in the starry sky? It seems that someone has surpassed the imperial ancestor realm and possesses the ability to escape the cage. That's impossible. The lightning taboo order that my clan controls on the starry sky ancient path can annihilate any heretic who dares to violate the taboo. With 9th granduncle's cultivation and the power of the lightning taboo order, it's not impossible for him to kill someone above the monarch ancestor realm. Don't forget that before 9th uncle headed to the ancient path in the starry sky, numerous terrifying figures that weren't inferior to 9th uncle had appeared in that world. Yes, I also remember that there was a fellow who was known as the Taishen Sword Emperor. He was unbelievably powerful. He had just arrived in our world, and he had already displayed world-shaking might. But for the past hundreds of thousands of years, the starry sky ancient path has always been covered by the lightning taboo that 9th uncle controls. How could he have been defeated today? For a time, all sorts of discussions resounded in the depths of the palace, and they were filled with bewilderment. This could indeed be said to be a shocking change that no one could have expected. The energy of the lightning taboo order that covered the starry sky ancient path was controlled by their clan, and it was born from the quintessence of the lightning taboo. Thus, it was called the lightning taboo order. On the other hand, 9th granduncle was a rather senior of seniority in their clan. He'd left the clan hundreds of thousands of years ago, traversed the void, and arrived at the ancient path in the starry sky ancient path. At the same time, he'd brought the lightning taboo order to the world that they took to be a low-end and declining place. Throughout these countless years, no mishaps had occurred there. But today, news had spread that it was very likely that ninth granduncle had perished, and even the energy of the lightning taboo order that he controlled had become ownerless. How could they not be shocked by this? What's there to panic about? Is the sky collapsing? It's just an unexpected change in a tiny starry sky ancient path. Could it possibly shake the foundation of our clan? Right amidst this anxious and bewildered atmosphere, an aged voice resounded from the depths of the palace, and it suppressed all other voices. Everyone in the hall went silent like cicadas in the winter. "Humph! Let me see how many flies will fly over from the ancient path in the next period of time." After that, an icy cold and emotionless voice resounded, and it caused the hearts of everyone in the hall to tremble. "I'll be able to emerge from my closed-door cultivation in 3 months. At that time, I'll personally make a trip to the ancient path in the starry sky. The energy of the lightning taboo order can't go out of control just like that." A hoarse voice resounded. "All right. With sixth brother going there personally, you'll definitely be able to find out who killed ninth brother. I only have one thing to say: this enmity must be repaid 100-fold or even 1,000-fold. Exactly. Annihilating the murderer alone is far from enough. We must annihilate his entire clan." On this day, a terrifying figure that was addressed as sixth brother by the seniors of the clan and sixth granduncle by the juniors of the clan had decided to head to the ancient path in 3 months. Obviously, this sixth granduncle was the next imperial exalt nameless that the young man with the golden cicada had mentioned. Outside the palace, on the enormous platform that was enshrouded in immortal energy, the vermilion bird lay weakly on the ground. She stared fixedly at the forbidden world pillar and muttered in her heart, "Young miss, you must be careful on the ancient path. You must not be captured by them, on the ancient path." A day later, the news of this chess match swept through the heavens like a landslide and a tsunami, and it caused a great upheaval. Countless people's hearts trembled with fear, and countless people were horrified. In this chess match that covered the heavens, 47 imperial emperors had perished. Imperial emperors. In the eyes of all living beings in the world, imperial emperors were like supreme overlords that possessed might that could shake the heavens and roar proudly through the universe. But now, all of them had perished in the chess match. How could anyone not be shocked? To the great powers in the world, what truly terrified them in this chess match were the imperial ancestors that had perished. An imperial ancestor could be called an imperial ancestor, and it could be said to be the most supreme force in the ancient path. Ordinary imperial emperors seemed to pale in comparison. On the other hand, in this game of chess that covered the heavens, all the imperial ancestors from the Tao courts like the universe, chaos, Panwu and devil clans, and the 10 war clans and primeval imperial clans had suffered calamity, and their souls were obliterated. Someone had calculated the number of imperial ancestors that were known to have perished, and there were as many as 23 of them. This was a shocking number that could shock the world, and it was sufficient to cause a huge change in the situation of the entire world. Just the heaven and earth, chaos, and Panwu Tao courts that had suffered the heaviest casualties, because too many imperial ancestors and imperial emperors had perished, and it was very likely that their foundations would be shaken, and they would fall into an extremely difficult situation. Why are the wandering souls of minuscule mountains so terrifying? Countless people trembled and firmly remembered the name Minuscule Mountain. In the ancient times, Minuscule Mountain's orthodoxy had been destroyed, and its disciples had been hunted down by the entire world. They were scornfully regarded as remnants. In the last 100,000 years, practically no news related to Minuscule Mountain had been heard. But no one had expected that such a power that had been destroyed a long time ago would reveal such terrifying strength in this game of chess that covered the heavens. They killed imperial emperors like they were weeds, and they killed imperial ancestors like they were chickens. This had completely overturned everyone's understanding and imagination. For a time, discussions about the battle emperor, Ruo Su, Li Xianwei, Pu Zhen, Shuiya, Qi Jun, and the other disciples of Minuscule Mountain had risen into an uproar in the world, and it grew more and more intense. On the other hand, there was only a single thing that truly terrified the colossi like the 6 Dao courts and 10 war clans. Imperial Exalt Nameless had been defeated by Minuscule Mountain. This was like a heaven-shaking nightmare, and it caused them to be anxious and unable to eat or sleep in peace. They were deeply afraid that the disciples of Minuscule Mountain, who had won in the chess match, would sweep over and trample through their sections. Although such a thing did not happen since the disciples of Minuscule Mountain had gone to the other side of the starry sky, the feeling of despair and terror was like a shadow that had been branded in the hearts of these great powers. Similarly, the news about the taboo order power losing control and the path to the other side of the starry sky appearing once again spread, causing a great uproar. The shackles that had shrouded the ancient starry sky path for countless years had been broken today, and the hope of reaching the other side had reappeared. This was like a change in the world. Yes, to all living beings in the world, this chess match was like the Tao War of the 10 regions in the primeval age, and the Tao War of the emperors in the ancient times. But this time, Minuscule Mountain had won. Without the control of Imperial Exalt Nameless, the taboo order that had shrouded the heavens was like a cage that had been guarded by someone, causing the entire world to undergo a drastic change. The world has changed. I wonder what kind of turmoil and calamity will befall the ancient starry sky path in the future. Some of the older figures were deeply worried. Every 100,000 years, there would be a change in the ancient path of the starry skies. It's no different this time around. I wonder who among the martial monarchs will be able to lead the world to the other side of the starry skies. Some people were complacent, and they felt that this shocking change meant that the situation in the starry sky would undergo a reshuffle, especially since the numerous Emperor Realm figures and Emperor Ancestor Realm seniors had left to head to the other side of the starry sky. It was equivalent to the ancient starry sky path losing a great deal of the deterrent force that caused others to be afraid. In the eyes of different powers and experts, this meant an opportunity to rise up. The boundless great world was filled with variables. Who would be in charge in the future? Countless people were watching nervously, looking forward to it, and making preparations in secret. A wisp of worry appeared between the sect master of the Dark Yellow Dao Court, Taishu Hong's brows. Even though the Dark Yellow Dao Court had stayed out of this chess match and wasn't harmed at all, and compared to the other Dao courts, it had suddenly become the most prosperous and powerful one. But only Taishu Hong knew that the current situation was still filled with too many unknown variables. Chapter 2136. Half a month later. Yanjing City, Central Earth Province. In a restaurant, by the window, Lin Sun was drinking alone, thinking about his worries. When Du So and the old priest left, they left a jade slip, which recorded some things about Luo Qingxuan, Lin Sun's mother, and Master Lu. Combined with what Lin Sun knew, he had roughly figured out some things in his mind. A long time ago, in order to avoid being hunted down, Luo Qingxuan crossed the starry sky from the other side of the starry sky to Xiao Empire in the lower world of the ancient desolation, with the heaven-accessing realm under the protection of her uncle, Star Bellow Battle Emperor and Master Lu. But on the way, Luo Qingxuan was seriously injured and fell into a long silence. When she woke up, she forgot many things in the past with incomplete memory. Later, she took part in the nation test of Xiao Empire and won the first place. Then she entered Green Deer School to cultivate as a female top scholar. At that time, Luo Qingxuan met Lin Wenjing, Lin Sun's father, and they fell in love. In this way, Luo Qingxuan and Lin Wenjing got married. Lu Boya didn't stop them. He couldn't stop them at all. At that time, Luo Qingxuan lost her memory and forgot too many things in the past. She didn't even remember who Lu Boya was. It was impossible for Luo Qingxuan to know that Lu Boya had established the Green Deer School, the commune of spiritual tattooists, and the Heiyao Shrine headed by the Queen of Eternal Night in the countless years when she had been silent. At that time, Du So and the old priest, who were dormant in Xiao Empire, both noticed that Lu Boya had a special background and talked with him. Unfortunately, Lu Boya didn't reveal too much. He only said that he was just a passerby who came to Xiao Empire to protect one person. Back then, the founding emperor of Xiao Empire had also talked with Lu Boya. Later, Lu Boya became the teacher of Zhao Yuanji, the eldest son of the founding emperor and the father of Zhao Jingxian. When Lin Sun learned this news from the Jade Slip, he couldn't help marveling. Although Master Lu didn't leave his name in the history of Xiao Empire, he had influenced Xiao Empire too much invisibly. Later, Du So and the old priest knew that the person Lu Boya wanted to protect was Luo Qingxuan, who married Lin Wenjing, the eldest son of Lin family. At this point, everything was calm and uneventful. However, the sudden murder that occurred in the Lin family completely destroyed all of this. Lin Sun had long known the truth of the matter. Although it was Yun Qingbai who broke into the Lin family and seized his spiritual vein, the mastermind behind the scenes was Quasi-Emperor Ba Qi from the Divine Sunshine Ancient Sect. If it were in the past, Lin Sun would not doubt that there was anything wrong with the truth. But when Lin Sun saw the horrible fighting power of the Du So and the old priest in the game of chess, he realized a problem. If the Du So and the old priest knew his mother, Luo Qingxuan, and Master Lu, how could they have watched a quasi-emperor commit a murder under their noses? In the Jade Slip, Du So and the old priest gave the answer. At the time of the Lin family's murder, the sky above the Forbidden City was covered by the power of the Forbidden Order, so the old priest and the old priest who lived in seclusion in the Forbidden City had to restrain all their senses and hide carefully. By the time the power of the Forbidden Order dissipated, the Lin family's murder had already happened, and there was no turning back. After knowing the answer, Lin Sun was shocked. He was sure that the Du So and the old priest were not lying, because in the whole world, only the power of the Forbidden Order could deeply threaten these two terrifying figures. But there was also a doubt that made Lin Sun feel even more disappointed. Ba Qi was just a quasi-emperor from the Divine Sunshine Ancient Sect. How could he be qualified to use the power of the Forbidden Order? Then, why did the power of the Forbidden Order come to the mortal world? The Du So and the old priest gave their own inference. The power of the Forbidden Order came to capture Luo Qingxuan, who escaped from the other side of the starry sky. And Ba Qi, the quasi-emperor, seemed to be the mastermind behind the scenes, but in fact, he was just following orders, because there was only one person in the world who could control and use the power of the Forbidden Order. That was the nameless Supreme Emperor. This inference also made Lin Sun feel cold all over. Only then did he realize that he was probably targeted by the nameless Supreme Emperor when he was born, and the mysterious disappearance of his parents was very likely related to the nameless Supreme Emperor. Thinking about it, the power of the Forbidden Order came from the other side of the starry sky, and his mother, Luo Qingxuan, also escaped from the other side of the starry sky a long time ago. His mother, Luo Qingxuan, was injured and had been silent for countless years. And the power of the Forbidden Order also covered the whole world for countless years. How could there be such a coincidence in this world? There must be a connection between them. This was Lin Sun's speculation. Soon after the murder of Lin family, the baby Lin Sun, whose spiritual vein was dug out, was taken away by Lu Boya and lurked in the unknown mine prison. According to the Du So and the old priest, the mine prison was built by Lu Boya himself and was set up with mysterious and terrible Taoist forbidden formations. But more than 10 years later, the prison was still destroyed. It was the overmatch of the force that chased after Luo Qingxuan and Lu Boya that year. At this point, Lin Sun finally straightened out the things of the past years. But the truth made him feel extremely shocked. At the same time, many doubts came to his mind. For example, why did his mother, Luo Qingxuan, and Lu Boya come to the small world where the Xiao Empire was located after escaping to the starry sky? And as far as Lin Sun knew, this small world was not simple. The young man with golden cicada, the innumerable tribulation emperor, and many other horrible creatures had hibernated in the bloodthirsty battlefield in this world. Similarly, the ultimate of the four great ruins of God was also located in the depths of the soul oblivion sea of this world. In the past, the place where Fang Xiyuan Mountain was located was very likely in the ultimate, and Lin Sun, who had pushed open the gate to heaven and seen the willpower left by Luo Tongtian, was even more clear that Luo Tongtian had also entered the ultimate a long time ago. And Luo Tongtian was the ancestor of Luo Qingxuan's lineage. This series of fragmented clues made Lin Sun have a bold conjecture. Back then, his mother, Luo Qingxuan, and Master Lu must have come to the mortal world not only to avoid being hunted, but also to enter the ultimate, because Luo Tongtian, the master of Tongtian, was said to have conquered all the heavens and never lost. But after entering the ultimate, he was frightened by a voice. That voice was from the master of the heart core. For Luo Qingxuan and Lu Boya, the existence who could frighten Luo Tongtian away was certainly a supreme figure. Perhaps the real reason they came to the mortal world was to find the master of the heart core. Of course, this was only Lin Sun's speculation. Perhaps only his mother, Luo Qingxuan, and Master Lu knew the truth. Master Lu must still be alive, but I don't know where he is now. Lin Sun poured himself a glass of wine and drank it in one gulp. He felt very strange to his parents. Since he was brought up by Master Lu, he had a deeper affection for Master Lu. Lin Sun couldn't be blamed for being cold-blooded. Since he was born, he didn't even know what his parents looked like. How could he have strong feelings for them? This was a regret in his heart. As a child, who didn't want their parents to be around. After drinking the pot of wine, the restaurant became more and more lively and noisy as more and more customers came in. The diners were all practitioners of Yanjing City. What they talked about the most was still the game of chess that happened half a month ago. This sensational event that affected all the heavens did not diminish after half a month. On the contrary, it became more and more intense as all kinds of inside stories were dug out. By now, not only the Hong Meng world, but other worlds in the starry sky were also discussing and analyzing this sensational event. Some people were talking about the heavy losses suffered by the 6 Taoist courts and the 10 war clans. Some were talking about the godlike successors of Mount Heart. Some were talking about the journey to the other side of the starry sky. Lin Sun, who was once a participant in the game, was too lazy to pay attention to these things. After ordering another pot of wine, Lin Sun thought of the message left by the young man with golden cicada. Someone in the dark world is waiting for you to untie the bell. It was just one sentence and it was very strange. But Lin Sun tasted a different flavor. The word untie the bell was very subtle. Anyone who saw it would think of a saying, the one who tied the bell should untie the bell. But the point was that Lin Sun didn't know when he became the one who tied the bell, and the one who tied the bell was in the dark world. But it could be foreseen that it must be unusual for the young man with golden cicada's identity to leave such a sentence before going to the other side of the starry sky. Who on earth needed him to untie the bell in the dark world? Lin Sun thought for a long time. He thought of the Divine Sunshine Ancient Sect, the Hidden Land Realm, and Senior Sister Ruosu said that second senior brother might be hiding in the dark world. But no matter how he thought about it, he couldn't figure it out. If there's a chance I can go there. Lin Sun pondered. Lin Sun had many plans when he crossed the starry sky on the boat and came to the Hong Meng world. For example, returning the bamboo leaf-shaped hairpin of senior brother Xiankong to Jiang Xingchue. or finding Boyazi of the Xuanji Taoist sect to inquire about senior brother Li Xianwei. Now, he had already done all these things. But there was one more thing that had been hidden in Lin Sun's heart. It was to go to the Xuanji Taoist sect. When he was in the Dew world, Lin Sun once asked Yu Qingyang, the Emperor of Green Sun Saber, about the ancient Wasteland Fighting League and the True Dragon World. Yu Qingyang once said, "Whether you want to find the True Dragon World or to find clues about the ancient Wasteland Fighting League, you can't go wrong to the Hong Meng world to find the Xuanji Taoist sect." The reason was very simple. The most mysterious Xuanji pavilion in the ancient Desolation realm was of the same origin as the Xuanji Taoist sect. Chapter 2137. I wonder how Jingxian is doing in the True Dragon realm. Lin Sun was stunned and absent-minded. He drank a cup of wine, but he did not taste it. Back then, in the ancient desolate regions Star Chess Sea, Zhao Jingxian left with Ao Zhentian and Yin Huan to the True Dragon realm to participate in the 10,000 Dragons immortal meet. He, Ahu, Old Toad, Alu, and the others went to the Kunlun ruins to train. Calculating the time, it had already been more than 10 years. We cultivators go against the flow of the world. Time is like a feather, and we don't know the year. Lin Sun took a deep breath and made a decision. I'll go to the Divine Mystery Tao sect. Suddenly, there was an uproar in the restaurant. A man in purple shook his head and said with a sigh, "That's right. In your eyes, there are only those Emperor Realm and Emperor Ancestor figures. What you care about is the matter of heading to the other side of the starry sky, but those are too far away from us. If I were to say that in this chess game there's a person who can't be ignored at all, but he's been ignored by most people in the world." At this point, someone could not help but be curious. Who? The man in purple said. Who else could it be? Fangtsuan Mountain's Lin Sun. Lin Sun. When the diners heard this name, they were all stunned, and then they revealed strange expressions. So it was this guy. More than 10 years ago, no one on the ancient path of the starry sky knew this name. However, with the end of the trip to the Kunlun ruins, this name resounded through the starry sky almost overnight, causing the world to tremble. His ferocious might was monstrous, and he caused havoc in the Kunlun ruins. He killed until all the heroes retreated in defeat, and blood flowed like rivers. No one could stop him, and in the end, he obtained the supreme fortune of becoming an Emperor Ancestor. It was not an exaggeration to say that it was the bloody battle results in the Kunlun ruins that made Lin Sun's name spread throughout the ancient path of the starry sky. After that, he was wanted by the various Tao courts, the 10 great war clans, and other colossal figures. He was regarded as the #1 wanted criminal in the starry sky. The entire starry sky was frantically searching for his traces. However, after more than 10 years, no one saw any traces of him, and his deeds gradually fell silent. After the end of the trip to the ancient immortal Forbidden Land, this chess game of chess came to an end. Everyone suddenly realized that this Lin Sun was not simple. He used the identity of Jin Di and obtained first place in the Cloud States Tao discussion. Like a dark horse, he participated in the Tao discussion held by the 6th Tao court. In the test, he defeated in the ancient path of immortal mystery realm. Not only was Lin Sun's, but he also was, he was not want was want not want. Huang Fu Xiaonong, Kong Zhao, Feng Bailing, Jing Tianan, when you, those peerless geniuses whose names shook the heavens, those monstrous figures from other worlds in the starry sky, were all killed by him. Even Mi Wuyao, who had been ranked first on the All Heavens King Sage board for 500 years, admitted defeat in the end. This series of battle achievements was simply like a miracle that could shock the ages and shock both ancient and modern times. And the one who created this miracle was Lin Sun, the future leader of Fangtsuan Mountain, who changed his name to Jin Di. In the past, Mi Wuyao was regarded as invincible in the Saint King realm. However, Lin soon used a bloody battle to announce what it meant to be invincible in this realm. Unfortunately, after the end of the trip to the ancient immortal Forbidden Land, the chess game of chess played out. With the fall of the emperors, the blood of the emperor ancestors, and the defeat of the nameless emperors, the path to the other side of the starry sky reappeared. After these big events, Lin Sun's performance in the ancient immortal Forbidden Land was overshadowed. As a result, there were less discussions about him on the ancient path of immortal mystery now. But there was no doubt that as long as this name was mentioned, people were bound to recall the various deeds of this legendary figure. I have to say, Lin Sun is indeed powerful. In the past, we have never seen such a powerful person. In the future, I'm afraid there won't be many who can compare to him. Is this what they mean by no one has ever done before? In the restaurant there was a burst of exclamations. The diners were all cultivators from Yanjing City in the Middle Earth State, and there was no lack of famous figures. In the past, when they faced cultivators from other states or other worlds in the starry sky, they all had a sense of superiority and pride. But now, when Lin Sun was mentioned, they could only restrain their pride and sigh in admiration. They had no choice but to be convinced. A young woman showed an infatuated expression and murmured, "If there is a chance, I really want to see this person's elegance." Immediately someone laughed, "Save it. I heard that this person has already gone to the other side of the starry sky with the other disciples of Fangtsuan Mountain. We won't see him on the ancient path of immortal mystery in the future." That's not necessarily true. Suddenly, a cold voice sounded. The one who spoke was a black-robed young man who was drinking alone like Lin Sun. He put down the wine cup in his hand and said, "As far as I know, this person didn't leave but stayed in the primordial world. Although I don't know why he chose to stay, it won't be long before he falls into eternal damnation." Their conversation caused the atmosphere in the restaurant to become much quieter. "May I ask if the news is true?" someone couldn't help but ask. The black-robed young man said coldly, "Just wait and see. It won't be long before the news about the arrest and killing of this person spread throughout the ancient path of immortal mystery." Everyone couldn't help but look sideways with different expressions. Someone said in surprise, "Now, Fangtsuan Mountain has won a great victory and defeated the nameless emperor. Is there anyone in this world who dares to touch Lin Sun?" Being questioned, the black-robed young man showed a displeased expression and said coldly, "Those remnants of Fangtsuan Mountain have left. Who can protect Lin Sun on the ancient path of immortal mystery?" Remnants. Hearing this hostile and insulting name, Lin Sun, who had been watching coldly, narrowed his eyes slightly, but he didn't do anything. This was Yanjing City, a huge city in the central continent. Tens of thousands of miles away from this city was the famous untainted Taoist court. Lin Sun dared to sit here and drink openly because he was using the Greenwood Taoist body, so he was not afraid of being recognized. But if he made a move, it would definitely cause some movement and unnecessary trouble. He might be targeted by people with bad intentions. If what you said is true, this Lin Sun, I'm afraid he will really encounter a big disaster. Someone analyzed, think about it, in the ancient immortal Forbidden Zone, how many descendants of ancient forces were killed by him? Not to mention others, just the 3 Taoist courts of Qiankuan, Untainted Land, and Panwu will never let him go. In addition, in that game of chess, many great emperors and ancestors died in the hands of those descendants of Fangtsuan Mountain. These supreme figures all came from different terrifying forces. This account must be counted on Lin Sun. In this case, I'm afraid this ancient path of immortal mystery can't tolerate this person at all. Even if he escapes to the dark world, he will be targeted by the Radiant God Ancient Sect and the Hidden Land Realm. Hearing this, there was a sound of gasping in the restaurant. They were just a group of listeners, but just understanding the hatred accumulated by the blood made them tremble with fear. It could be imagined that if Lin Sun really stayed on the ancient path of immortal mystery, how terrifying the killing tribulation he would face would be. If this world can't tolerate such a peerless figure like Lin Sun, then it's too disappointing. The young woman showed an angry expression. Can't beat Fangsuan Mountain, so they vent their hatred on Lin Sun alone. How sad is this? Everyone showed a disapproving look. Since ancient times, the world had been so cruel. The weak were prey to the strong. The black-robed young man got up and walked to the young woman with a cold expression, with a touch of arrogance and warning. Miss, Lin Sun is not worthy of your admiration. He is an unpardonable madman with bloody hands. Sooner or later, he will be killed and told to the world. In order to avoid misunderstanding, I advise you to be careful with your words in the future. Don't let people think that you are with the remnants of Fangsuan Mountain. The young woman's expression changed, and she was uncertain. The black-robed young man turned and walked out of the restaurant with his hands behind his back. Bill, please. Lin Sun casually threw out a storage pouch and walked out. In the banquet behind him, there was an exclamation. I know, that person just now is the successor of the primitive Dao court. His name is Su Lingzhen. So he is a descendant of the immemorial emperor clan, Su Lingzhen. No wonder his tone was so confident. So Lin Sun might not have left. Let's wait, there will definitely be news. Outside the city, boundless mountains rose and fell, and divine brilliance flowed, swallowing and spitting out multicolored light, beautiful and vigorous. In the Middle Earth state, such mountains and scenes could be seen everywhere, which set off how extraordinary the vast world of the Middle Earth state was. In fact, it was only a state, but it could accommodate the 6 Dao courts, 10 war clans, and many immemorial emperor clans. This was extraordinary in itself. This was also why the primordial world was regarded as the first world of the ancient path of immortal mystery, and why the Middle Earth state in the primordial world was regarded as the core of all heavens. All the emperors rose together here, and the Taofather lived in seclusion here. It was so easy to say. Su Lingzhen teleported through space, passed through the boundless mountains, and flew towards the distance. When he flashed past a gorge, he suddenly stopped, and a wisp of killing intent appeared on the tip of his brows. Friend, you've followed me all the way from the restaurant. Do you really think I didn't notice? He turned around and looked towards a certain area of space, and he revealed a wisp of contempt. This sort of stealth and concealment technique was really too vulgar, and it caused him to be unable to arouse the slightest vigilance in his heart. Swish! Space roiled, and then Lin Sun's figure appeared. His aura was indifferent and simple. Lin Sun couldn't help but sneer when he noticed Su Lingzhen's disdain. This idiot! I haven't concealed myself all along the way. If he still can't notice me, then he's simply worse than an idiot. Chapter 2138. Tens of thousands of miles away from Yanjing City was the place where the primitive Taoist court was located. As the successor of the primitive Taoist court and the descendant of the Su family, even if an emperor came, Su Lingzhen would not be too afraid. Which emperor dared to attack the successor of the primitive Taoist court near the primitive Taoist court? It was simply courting death. What was more, the guy in front of him had been so vulgar all the way that Su Lingzhen really couldn't care less about him. Unfortunately, Su Lingzhen forgot one thing. The world had changed. In that game of chess, the primitive Taoist court was one of the major forces that suffered the heaviest blow. No one knew how many emperors and emperors died. Even the Su family of the primitive Taoist court suffered heavy casualties. Of course, a lean camel was still bigger than a horse. For ordinary practitioners, both the primitive Taoist court and the Su family of the primitive Taoist court were still powerful enough to make people tremble. But obviously, Lin Sun was not one of them. Therefore, in the face of Su Lingzhen's undisguised contempt and killing intent, Lin Sun's response was very simple. He stretched out his hand and grasped in the air. The next moment, Su Lingzhen was grasped like an ant. Many bones in his body were broken in an instant, and his chi all over his body collapsed in an instant. He was stunned for a moment, and then he felt endless pain and panic. He wanted to shout, but he couldn't make a sound at all. When he looked at Lin Sun again, his eyes were full of fear. Is the successor of minuscule mountain something that someone like you can insult and insult? Lin Sun said calmly. Su Lingzhen felt as if he had been struck by lightning. His pupils dilated, and he suddenly realized who the person in front of him was. But Lin Sun was too lazy to speak again. Like a dead tree that had lost its vitality, Su Lingzhen's body turned into ashes and disappeared without a trace. This was the talent power of Greenwood Taoist body, which could control life and death. The next moment, Lin Sun floated away. A few hours later, a ray of light tore through space and arrived here, and it transformed into a white-robed old man. His gaze scanned the surroundings, and in the end, he grabbed a handful of dust. Su Lingzhen. His soul has already dissipated. The white-robed old man's face was livid, and his eyes were full of monstrous killing intent. Not long after, the white-robed old man appeared in Yanjing City and came to the restaurant where Su Ling had appeared. With his methods, it didn't take him long to find out some valuable information. For example, the words that Su Lingzhen had once said here, as well as his undisguised hatred and slander towards the successor of Mount Innerheart. For example, Su Lingzhen once said that it wouldn't be long before Lin Sun, the successor of Mount Mind and Heart, would suffer an unprecedented calamity. For example, when Su Lingzhen left, there was a person who followed him. This series of clues allowed the white-robed old man to instantly make a bold deduction. It was very likely that Lin Sun killed Su Ling. One had to know that the territory that Yanjing City was located in was the territory that the primordial Tao Court's forces covered. Looking at the heavens, who would have the guts to kill a descendant of the primordial Tao Court? It must be the remnants of Mount Fangtsuan. The white-robed old man's eyes flickered. I was just fretting about where to go to hunt down a little bastard like you, but you actually took the initiative to appear. You really don't know what's good for you. Without the protection of those disciples of Mount Fangtsuan, how long can a little bug like you jump around for? On this day, the primordial Tao Court was furious, and the headmaster issued an order: search for Lin Sun, the successor of Mount Mind and Heart, and kill him without mercy. Immediately after, the primordial Tao Court was like an enraged ancient beast, and all the forces in the territory it covered began to take action. Countless powerhouses went out to battle, and secret agents were mobilized like a tide. The forces of the major clans under the primordial Tao Court's command were also mobilized. On this day, there was a complete uproar in the Central Earth Taoist province. As one of the 6 great Taoist courts, the primordial Tao Court had stood for tens of thousands of years. Even though its vitality had been greatly damaged in that game of chess, the power it possessed was still enough to make the heavens tremble. Therefore, as the primordial Tao Court launched this hunt against Lin Sun, it also attracted the attention of the world, and countless powerhouses were shocked. But all of this was not over. In the following time, the Qiankuan Taoist Court, the Panwu Taoist Court, the Demons Taoist Court, the Taowu Fighting Clan, the Blackwater Fighting Clan, the Heavenly Ghost Fighting Clan. One by one, the behemoths announced to the outside world that Lin Sun, the successor of Mount Mind and Heart, was wanted throughout the entire starry ancient path. Moreover, they offered an extremely generous reward for this. The weight of the reward was enough to make any Emperor Realm cultivator jealous and drool. For a time, the winds and clouds of the entire Central Earth Tao province changed. In the vast and boundless territory, in every city, bounty posters targeting Lin Sun were posted. The murderous aura pierced through the sky. How stupid is this Lin Sun? Why did he choose to stay behind alone? This time, I'm afraid he's finished. Countless cultivators were in an uproar and were shocked. Only then did the world realize that Lin Sun, the successor of Mount Mind and Heart, had actually stayed on the starry ancient path, and did not choose to go to the other side of the starry sky. The great forces that were once killed by Mount Mind and Heart have finally found a target to vent their anger on. From now on, Lin Sun is a rat that everyone hates. Some people were excited. If the successors of Mount Mind and Heart were still here, which orthodoxy in the world would dare to do this? Using the resources of the great forces of Untainted Land, Qiankuan, and Panwu to target Lin Sun together, it's simply, utterly shameless. Some people could not bear to see this, but they could only curse inwardly, not daring to speak out. At the end of the day, the forces of the 6 major Dao courts and the 10 major war clans were still the strongest. The current Lin Sun is no longer the same as before. He's already a Ju Wu quasi-emperor. How many people in the world are as heaven-defying as him? I'm afraid that only a martial emperor can suppress him. But the key is, will Lin Sun wait to be suppressed like an idiot? Given the strength of the successors of Mount Mind and Heart, if they really want to take revenge, which force in the world can stop them? Now that they've already left, they still have no intention of stopping. This is simply deranged. Mi Wuya heaved a long sigh when he heard this news. He suddenly felt an indescribable disappointment towards the Panwu Dao court that he belonged to. From this day on, Mi Wuyao went into seclusion and no longer cared about the outside world. When Ju Wu became a martial emperor, he would leave completely. Headmaster, in this world, I'm afraid only our Yellow Heaven Court can protect Lin Sun. In the Yellow Heaven Court, Ling Hongzhuang found Headmaster Tai Shu Hong. After learning that Lin Sun was wanted, there was an indescribable anger in her heart. Indeed, she was once Lin Sun's opponent, but she could not bear to see the way the heavens acted. It was too despicable, too shameless, and there was no bottom line at all. You want the Yellow Heaven Court to help this boy? Tai Shu Hong frowned. Ling Hongzhuang nodded. Hongzhuang, do you know why Qiankuan, Untainted Land, and Panwu are so desperate to deal with Lin Sun? Tai Shu Hong said. It's very simple. If this boy is alive, he will be like a thorn in the hearts of these forces, making them unable to eat and sleep in peace. But he's just a Ju Wu quasi-emperor. Ling Hongzhuang could not help saying. Tai Shu Hong shook his head. Wrong, he's not as simple as Ju Wu quasi-emperor. He's also the successor of Mount Fangsuan. He was once invincible in the Saint Realm and has a terrifying foundation. If he's given time to grow up, he may become the second Dozhan Emperor. And this is what worries those great forces the most. Ling Hongzhuang was horrified. The Dozhan Emperor was already so powerful that he could defeat the nameless Supreme Emperor. If Lin Sun also possessed such supreme power in the future, it would indeed make those forces that were hostile to Mount Fangsuan uneasy. Hongzhuang, after the end of that game of chess, our Yellow Heaven Court was able to protect ourselves because we remained neutral and did not participate in it. This time, we won't participate in it either. Tai Shu Hong said in a deep voice, revealing a sense of inviolability. Although Ling Hongzhuang had already guessed this, she could not help but feel disappointed. Could this seemingly just, but in fact there was no attitude to speak of at all, really be maintained like this? Ling Hongzhuang sighed in her heart. Outside a huge city, Lin Sun looked at the wanted posters posted on the city walls and could be seen everywhere, and could not help laughing inwardly. In the past, he had encountered many pursuits, and each time he had to flee in panic, experiencing blood and danger. But now, how could he care about these things? Back in the Yellow Heaven Court, under the eyes of Fire Spirit Empress and other Emperor Realm figures, no one could see through his identity, let alone the current him, who was already different from before. However, Lin Sun was still surprised, because there was a real Emperor Realm figure on the city tower. From the discussions of the people, he quickly learned that this was Battle Emperor of Auspicious Sun, from the primitive Taoist court, who had just arrived and was stationed here to hunt and kill Lin Sun. Moreover, not only in this city, But in other cities in the central Taoist state, there were also Emperor realm figures like Battle Emperor of Auspicious Sun. This was like weaving an inescapable net, waiting to catch the fish Lin Sun. They really think highly of me. Lin Sun sighed inwardly. Lin Sun sighed with emotion in his heart. Without hesitation, he entered the city calmly. The moment he entered the city gate, a terrifying emperor realm will swept over him, but soon disappeared. Lin Sun walked into the vast sea of people as if he was unaware of it. In the city tower, Battle Emperor of Auspicious Sun looked calm as he sipped his tea. He did not realize that the fish being hunted by the whole world had just walked right under his nose. There was an ancient transmission formation in the center of the city. After Lin Sun arrived, he paid a large sum of Taoist gems and walked into it. The Shenji Taoist sect he was going to was located in the Fog State, which was 9 states away from the central Taoist state. If he relied on teleportation, it would take at least 3 to 5 months. Lin Sun did not have much time to waste on traveling, so using the ancient transmission formation naturally became his first choice. Chapter 2139. The teleportation formation was like a passageway that dotted every city. Different teleportation formations could be used to teleport to each other. According to Lin Sun's itinerary, he would need to enter 39 cities and use different teleportation formations to reach the mist state. This was already the most time-saving choice. However, he would have to pay a sky-high price of doctrine gems. Fortunately, Lin Sun didn't lack doctrine gems. As an obscure spatial fluctuation spread, Lin Sun's figure immediately disappeared from the teleportation formation. "Get out of the way!" A loud roar was heard. A figure with peerless divine might dashed toward the ancient teleportation portal. It was a young man in a gray robe, holding a bronze lamp in his hand. The lamp oil was as red as blood, and the light flickered, emitting strange fluctuations. Damn it! He actually escaped. When he saw that the teleportation formation was already empty, the young man's face darkened, and he was so angry that his eyes almost popped out of their sockets. "Lu Chu, what happened?" Battle Emperor Rui Yang's figure appeared out of thin air. His figure was thin and his hair was white. He exuded a monstrous emperor aura, suppressing the nearby cultivators into retreat. It was like seeing a god. "Senior, just now I used the power of the blood-drinking green lamp to capture Lin Sun's blood fluctuations, but I was a step too late." He escaped using the teleportation formation. The gray-robed youth called Lu Chu revealed a dejected expression. He came from the Heaven and Earth Taoist court, but he also recognized Battle Emperor Rui Yang from the prehistoric Taoist court. Even though he was depressed, he didn't dare to be negligent. The blood-drinking green lamp. Battle Emperor Rui Yang revealed a strange expression. This lamp was extremely magical. As long as it could collect the target's blood and use it as lamp oil, it would firmly lock onto the target no matter where they fled. Battle Emperor Rui Yang's expression darkened. "You mean that little bastard Lin Sun escaped from under my nose?" Lu Chu didn't say anything, tacitly agreeing. Battle Emperor Rui Yang's expression flickered. He felt as if he'd been slapped in the face. Only now did he react, and his face was burning. "The blood in this lamp." He looked at the blood-drinking blue lamp. "Senior's guess is correct. This blood came from Lin Sun. Back then, in front of the dilapidated gate to the ancient immortal Forbidden Zone, he was gravely injured. His blood flowed like a fountain, and a successor of my sect collected a portion of it." Lu Chu said quickly, "According to our understanding of this kid, he's extremely good at disguising himself and hiding his tracks. It can be said that he's unpredictable. Even if it's an Emperor Realm expert, it's impossible to lock onto him with ordinary searching methods. But with the blood-drinking azure lamp, things are different." Battle Emperor Rui Yang nodded. After that, he took a deep breath and said, "Since this kid has left through the teleportation array, he must have sensed the situation he's in. We should act with all our strength to prevent him from escaping from the Central Plains province. Lu Chu deeply agreed. On the same day, Battle Emperor Ruiyang spread the news. He immediately received the cooperation of Chaos, Qian Kuan, Pan Wu, and other major forces. They dispatched all kinds of forces from all directions. It was also on this day that every single legendary ancient formation in the Middle-earth Dao province was sealed. Apart from Chaos, Qian Kuan, Pan Wu, and other Dao court forces, no other cultivators had the opportunity to borrow it. This was equivalent to completely sealing off Lin Sun's possibility of leaving through the teleportation array. Peacock City. When Lin Sun saw the sealed teleportation array, he immediately realized that the enemy had most likely grasped the means to track him. Looks like I can only change my strategy. Lin Sun wasn't nervous. If the teleportation array couldn't be used, then he could just fly and teleport. It would just take some time. Whoosh! The vast universe arc shuttled through the sky. Lin Sun sat on it, meditating quietly. Not long ago in the ancient immortal Forbidden Zone, his cultivation had just broken through to the peak of the Quasi-Emperor realm. Moreover, unlike other peak Quasi-Emperors, when he stepped into the first heaven of the Quasi-Emperor realm, the divine fire of the Great Path condensed in his body had already fused the mysteries of body refining, chi refining, and soul refining. It should be known that the divine fire of the Great Path of other Quasi-Emperors could only break through to the next level after fusing the mysteries of each path. From this, it could be seen how different Lin Sun's cultivation was at this moment. This didn't mean that Lin Sun's cultivation had leaped to the third heaven of the Quasi-Emperor realm, but that the divine fire of the Great Path he condensed was too unique. This also allowed him to completely embark on a unique path that was different from the world. A Quasi-Emperor could control the incomplete laws of the Emperor realm. This was also the reason why they were called Quasi-Emperors. But Lin Sun recently discovered that the laws of the Great Path that he now controlled, although also incomplete, were almost no different from the true Emperor realm. Could this be because the divine fire of the Great Path that I condensed is too unique? Lin Sun fell into deep thought. If he was able to control the power of the Great Path that was almost comparable to the true Emperor realm at the Quasi-Emperor realm, this undoubtedly seemed incredible. At least in the past years, such a thing had never happened. When there's a chance, I must test it. Lin Sun stroked his chin, a bold idea emerging in his mind. But soon, he abandoned the distracting thoughts in his mind and began to temper the spirit of the five viscera. Today, he already had the foundation to practice the mysteries of the five virtues realm of the Great Path Yellow Court Scripture. If he could successfully practice it, the five doppelgangers, greenwood, yellow earth, scarlet fire, black water, and platinum, could have consciousness and cultivation not inferior to the original body. At that time, he alone could exert the combat power of 6 people. The most amazing thing was that when not fighting, other doppelgangers could also comprehend the Great Path and figure out the Taoist scripture. This undoubtedly saved Lin Sun a lot of energy and time on the road of cultivation. It should be known that when Ruosu and Li Xianwei left, they had given their inheritance to Lin Sun one by one, so that he had a lot of inheritance. If he comprehended it alone, he didn't know how much time and energy it would take. But if there were 5 doppelgangers comprehending at the same time, it would be completely different. Therefore, for Lin Sun, the top priority was not to break through the cultivation, but to thoroughly practice the 5 virtues realm. Although Lin Sun had long guessed that the enemy was very likely to have mastered the means to track him, but he did not expect that the other side would come so quickly. One day after he left Yongke City, in a vast desert, Lin Sun, who was meditating in the vast universe arc, was awakened by a wave of power. Walking out of the cabin, he saw a gorgeous divine rainbow descending from the sky, bright and blazing, emitting an aura that caused the desert to be filled with sand and dust. The leader was a sage-like old man, holding a snow-white horsetail whisk in his hand, exuding the aura of the Emperor realm, oppressing the heaven and earth to wail. Behind him followed a group of quasi-emperor experts, each with a powerful aura. In the central Earth Taoist province, where there were many hidden dragons and crouching tigers, such a lineup, although not luxurious, was more than enough to deal with a Ju-Shi quasi-emperor. These guys, they came quite fast. Lin Sun looked calm, without a trace of panic. He could roughly guess that the other party had borrowed the power of the ancient teleportation formation to catch up to him in such a short time. Evil creature, let's see where you can escape. The leading old man spoke majestically, his voice like thunder, shaking the surroundings and filling the air with a murderous aura. As he spoke, each of them had firmly locked their aura on Lin Sun, and each of them had an undisguised killing intent in their eyes. Lin Sun seemed to be unaware of this. His dark eyes were deep, and he said calmly, "Old beast, tell me your name. Maybe if I'm in a good mood, I'll erect a tombstone for you." The old man could not help frowning. "Now that you're all alone, I really can't see why you dare to be so arrogant." "Won't you know if I try?" Lin Sun said indifferently. The calmer he was, the less calm the old man was. The game of chess had just come to an end, although the successors of Mount Fangsuan had long since left, leaving only Lin Sun. But who could guarantee that the successors of Mount Fangsuan did not leave any trump card for him when they left? "You go and capture this little thing, I'll hold the line for you," the old man ordered in a deep voice. The quasi-emperor experts behind him were all stunned, looking at each other with some hesitation. They were not stupid. How could they not know that Lin Sun was no longer the same as before? He was a real quasi-emperor. In terms of cultivation, he might not be as good as the older generation of quasi-emperors, but the key was that he was a quasi-emperor who had set foot on the peak. The old man's face darkened. "Why, I'm here, are you still worried that something will go wrong?" Seeing this, Lin Sun could not help but sneer. "Old beast, if you're not afraid, come and fight. Why send others to die?" This sentence was exactly what the quasi-emperors wanted to say, but they dared not express their dissatisfaction with a real quasi-emperor like Lin Sun did. And being called "old beast" by Lin Sun, the old man's face was as black as the bottom of a pot, and he was furious. As a quasi-emperor, who looked down on the world and was respected by all living beings, who dared to be so presumptuous and slanderous? "Little bastard, I didn't want to bully the weak, but you took advantage of me. In that case I'll kill you." As the old man spoke, he suddenly waved the snow-white horsetail whisk in his hand. Crash! The sky was full of white divine rainbows spread like rain, full of the profound meaning of the Emperor Law. The void collapsed and roared in an instant, as if it could not bear such terrible power. This part of the world also fell into turmoil and chaos. This was the power of the quasi-emperor realm. Just a single blow was earth-shattering and frightening. The quasi-emperors were shocked. When could they cross the threshold of the quasi-emperor realm and remove the word quasi-emperor from them? Lin Sun stood motionless on the vast universe Arkansas. But between his hair, a needle-like flying sword emerged and gently chopped in the void. Chapter 2140. The flying sword was only 3 inches long, which was extremely small. But when it slashed out, it was like a big sun shining in the sky, shining brightly. That sword chi was extremely wild. It gave off a feeling that even if the heavens and earth were to block it, yin and yang were to be separated, life and death were to be placed before it. "Let's cut it down first." The divine rainbow-colored light rain that filled the sky with Emperor Realm laws instantly broke apart in the void, like a bunch of straws that had been neatly cut. And the old man standing thousands of meters away coughed up blood, injured by the sword chi, and his internal organs were seriously injured. His figure shook and he almost fell from the void, his face full of horror. The power of one sword was so fierce. Those quasi-emperors were also shocked, their hair standing on end. This old man came from the Panwu Taoist court and was called Battle Emperor Qingyun. He was a real Emperor Realm cultivator with the first level of Emperor Realm. Even if compared with other great emperors, the first level of Emperor Realm was nothing, he was still a real Emperor Realm cultivator. Looking at the whole world, he could be regarded as a supreme existence. But now, Battle Emperor Qingyuan was seriously injured by one sword. This 3-inch flying sword was naturally the sword spirit leaf. Although it was a seriously damaged sword spirit, Ji Xian, the Thunder Emperor of Silence, and Jun Huan together failed to take it away from Mount Buzhou a long time ago. One could imagine just how ferocious the sword spirit Yi was. Go! Battle Emperor Qingyuan chose to escape without hesitation. He finally realized that his previous guess was right. Although the descendants of Mount Fangtsuan had left, they left behind many life-saving means. For example, the sword spirit was unimaginably terrifying. Leaf. As soon as Lin Sun spoke, the sword spirit leaf had already turned into a ray of light, pierced the sky, and chased after Battle Emperor Qingyuan. Now we're the only ones left. Lin Sun looked at those quasi-emperors with a bright smile. Since he set foot in the quasi-emperor realm, he had not experienced many bloody battles, except when he killed Jing Tianan, Shang Xian, and several others in the ancient immortal forbidden area. Run! Those quasi-emperors had long been frightened. Seeing that their greatest reliance, Emperor Qingyuan, had fled, how could they have the courage to fight against Lin Sun? All of a sudden, all of them ran away, each and every one of them using all their skills, wishing that their parents had given them 2 more legs. Whoosh! Lin Sun moved in the void, his figure flashing like a flowing light. Every time he appeared, he took the life of a quasi-emperor, and blood sprayed like fireworks. In just a few moments, 4 older generation quasi-emperors had been killed. They were no match for Lin Sun's one move and were killed like papier-mâché. Just as Lin Sun was about to chase after the remaining 2 quasi-emperors, buzz! A ferocious sword hum resounded. In the distance, a blinding sword chi flashed, and the 2 quasi-emperors who had fled far away disappeared like bubbles. At the same time, the sword spirit leaf returned. Lin Sun couldn't help saying, "That old guy, kill him." Leaf's voice was low. It turned into a ray of light and hid in Lin's hair again. Its ferocious spirit was gone, and it was quiet without any breath. Lin Sun couldn't help smiling bitterly. After killing an Emperor Realm expert, Leaf also helped him kill 2 quasi-emperors. Leaf's combat power was too fierce. Lin Sun said in a low voice, "Next time, if you meet an Emperor Realm expert, try to spare his life." Why? Leaf was puzzled. Lin Sun licked his lips and said, "I lack opponents, or in other words, I lack a target to hone my combat power. Ordinary quasi-emperors are no match for me, and in this world, there are very few peerless quasi-emperors, so I can only choose some Emperor Realm experts to feed me." If others heard this, they would be shocked. Using an Emperor Realm expert as a target to hone his own body? If any quasi-emperor dared to clamor like this on this ancient starry sky road, he would be killed in minutes. But Leaf looked like he understood and said, "I see, then the next time I make a move, I will be more careful." Lin Sun suddenly smiled, and then remembered one thing. "Leaf, now that we have the opportunity to go to the other side of the starry sky, why didn't you agree to leave with Senior Ji Xian last time?" After the end of that game of chess, Lin Sun had mentioned this to Sword Spirit Leaf. "I am only familiar with your aura," Leaf said, "and I only believe that you can take me back." Lin Sun was stunned for a moment, and then nodded. This was a wonderful sense of trust, very inexplicable, but Lin Sun believed it was true. Without delay, Lin Sun maneuvered the vast universe arc and continued to move forward. 2 days later, Lin Sun was besieged again, and was overtaken by a group of strong people from Heaven and Earth Taoism court. The leader was still an Emperor Realm figure, known as Sword Emperor of Chaos. Sword Emperor of Chaos was very conceited, even more overbearing than Battle Emperor Qingyuan. As soon as he caught up with Lin Sun, he only said one sentence, "How do you want to die?" It was just a few words, but it showed his strength. But in just a moment, Sword Emperor of Chaos's screams began to ring in this world, like the wailing of ghosts and the howling of wolves. Of course, it was Sword Spirit Leaf who took action. In the end, Sword Emperor of Chaos's body was covered with sword scars, blood flowing, and he was captured alive like prey. The group of quasi-emperors who came with him were all killed by Lin Sun. From beginning to end, he did not encounter any obstacles or accidents. In fact, when killing these quasi-emperors, Lin Sun couldn't help but feel bored. It was not that these quasi-emperors were not strong enough, but his current combat strength had long been far above the level that these quasi-emperors could not reach. What do you want to do? In a valley, when Sword Emperor of Chaos woke up from a coma, he saw that Lin Sun seemed to have been waiting there for a long time. Lin Sun's eyes were faint, burning with an inexplicable flame, like a fierce beast staring at its prey, ready to move, full of desire. This made Sword Emperor of Chaos mad with shame and anger, and his face turned green. Since when did a junior dare to look at him with such an unbridled gaze? At this moment, Sword Emperor of Chaos had the illusion of a virgin girl being stared at by a devil. He felt uncomfortable all over and his hair stood on end. Lin Sun crooked his finger. "Come, fight with me." Sword Emperor of Chaos was taken aback for a moment, then laughed with extreme anger. Did this little guy really think that he could despise him just because he was seriously injured? He really didn't know what was good for him. He struggled to get up and shook his dizzy head while his gaze swept the surroundings vigilantly, and then he said in a resolute voice, "Little bastard, all you're relying on is that sword spirit. If you want to use this to humiliate me, then you're gravely mistaken. It's just a battle, don't talk so much nonsense." As Lin Sun said, he flashed in the air and launched an attack. Boom! He operated his own strength to the extreme, and the power of laws intertwined, dazzling, like a python wandering around his body, disdainful and powerful. As he punched out, the void suddenly collapsed, and the rolling mountains nearby collapsed one by one, frightening countless ferocious beasts in the mountains. This was the extreme power that belonged to Quasi-Emperor Ju who, from the beginning, Lin Sun did not hold back. Lin Sun, who had already seen the power of the Emperor Realm, knew better than other cultivators in the world how terrible the Emperor Realm was. Even if a dragon was seriously injured, it was still a dragon, destined to be different from ants. Just like Sword Emperor of Chaos, no matter how seriously injured he was still a real Emperor Realm expert. "You're courting death." Sword Emperor of Chaos revealed a ferocious look, completely desperate. With a wave of his sleeve, the sword chi swept out like a waterfall, surging between heaven and earth, and the sword roared like thunder. In an instant, Lin Sun's fist was smashed, and his figure was shaken and staggered back. Instead of being shocked, he was overjoyed. His black eyes were surging with fighting intent, like a pair of burning suns, and his whole spirit was boiling. Again. He rushed forward, exerting his Tao and Dharma to the extreme, wantonly releasing it. Noticing that the sword spirit did not intervene, Sword Emperor of Chaos completely relaxed. His eyes flickered, and he was ready to capture Lin Sun as a hostage. Boom! He no longer held back and attacked with all his strength. The sword chi around him pierced through the 9 heavens and 10 earths. Even if he was seriously injured at the moment and could only exert 20% of his peak fighting strength, the power of the Emperor Realm was still earth-shattering and terrifying. This mountain was shaking, mountains and rivers were collapsing, the earth was cracking, and the clouds in the sky were collapsing. The terrifying power of destruction was like a storm, raging in all directions. In a flash, Lin Sun was defeated dozens of times, like an ant trying to shake a big tree. He looked very embarrassed and miserable, but every time he was defeated, he rushed up again and fought with all his might. The more he was defeated, the braver he became, and the stronger he became. This surprised Sword Emperor of Chaos for a while. He wanted to capture Lin Sun as a hostage several times, but he failed every time. Lin Sun's heaven-defying combat power made him shudder with fear. It should be known that he was a real Emperor Realm expert. Even if he was seriously injured, the power he controlled and the cultivation he possessed were enough to easily kill any quasi-emperor in the world. But now, he repeatedly failed to defeat Lin Sun, a young man who had just stepped into the peak of the quasi-emperor realm. How could Sword Emperor of Chaos not be shocked? At the very least, in his countless years of experience, he'd never heard of such a person in this world. However, Sword Emperor of Chaos also saw that Lin Sun could not hold on for too long. Boom! A moment later, at the moment when Lin Sun was defeated again, Sword Emperor of Chaos seized the opportunity and suddenly stretched out his hand to capture Lin Sun alive like a bug. But at this moment, with a bang, Sword Emperor of Chaos felt as if his head had been hit by a heavy hammer. His vision darkened, his consciousness blurred, and he fainted. Before he fainted, his heart was full of unspeakable grief and indignation. A dignified Emperor Realm expert was knocked unconscious by a stick. The one who knocked him unconscious was naturally Sword Spirit Yi. Yi looked at Lin Sun, who was beaten black and blue and looked extremely miserable. He could not help but worry. "Are you all right?" Lin Sun took a deep breath and shook his head. "I'm fine." Yi asked, "Then, do you still want to target Emperor Realm experts?" "Yes." Lin Sun gritted his teeth. His black eyes were bright and his face was swollen. He said excitedly, "I can feel that if I continue to practice like this, not only my fighting strength will be transformed, but also my understanding of the power of Emperor Realm will be further improved." "Oh," Yi said with a look of sudden realization. "So you like to improve your combat power by being abused. You're really a pervert." Chapter 2141. For others, being chased by the major forces of the Central Earth State was enough to make anyone desperate and collapse. But for Lin Sun, it was better to say that he was still hurrying on his own than being chased. No matter how serious and dangerous the situation was, he didn't change his mind to go to Shinji Taoism sect. Fighting and learning from each other with Sword Emperor of Chaos became a compulsory course for Lin Sun on the way, in order to temper himself and rise to the top. In order to have a deeper understanding of the power controlled by the Emperor Realm. After fighting with Lin Sun many times and being knocked unconscious by Leaf, Sword Emperor of Chaos had to accept a fact with grief and indignation. A martial emperor like him, who was powerful enough to shake the heavens, had now been reduced to a human target. When it was needed, it would be taken out and used. When not needed, he would be knocked unconscious and thrown aside. This made him so ashamed and angry that he even had the idea of killing himself several times. It was such a blow to him that a dignified Emperor Realm expert became a live target of a junior. Since ancient times, which Emperor Realm expert had suffered such a great shame like him? No. If such a thing were to spread, at the thought of the consequences, the Sword Emperor of the Chaos Void had the urge to die. But in the end, he didn't kill himself. It was not that he didn't want to, but he didn't dare to. Those who could set foot in the Emperor Realm like him had gone through countless hardships and dangers in their lives before finally setting foot on the road of the Emperor Realm, which most practitioners in the world couldn't reach. The more it was so, the more unwilling he was to kill himself like this. Sword Emperor of Chaos had an extremely tough and tenacious state of mind. Although he wanted to die of shame and indignation, he just thought about it. Later, he even had an unprecedented obsession in his heart. He must seize the opportunity to capture Lin Sun alive before the damn Sword Spirit knocked him unconscious. This obsession made Sword Emperor of Chaos learn to endure humiliation and endure hardship. He firmly believed that God wouldn't disappoint those who worked hard, and there would be a day when he could avenge himself. Lin Sun didn't care about this at all. He just regarded Sword Emperor as a target to temper himself. The Sword Spirit didn't care either. Even if he wanted to pay attention to a first-level emperor, he wouldn't be able to. If Sword Emperor of Chaos knew Lin Sun and Ye's thoughts, it was unknown whether he would give up the obsession of enduring humiliation and commit suicide directly. In short, although Lin Sun was in a hurry, he had a fulfilling life. Other than cultivating the great Tao Golden Court scripture and tempering his 5 viscera, he was also looking for opportunities to spar with the Chaos Void Sword Emperor. Although he was defeated time and time again and was in a sorry state, he enjoyed it. More than 10 days had passed in a flash. This journey was not peaceful. On the contrary, it was filled with danger and killing. The enemy was like maggots in the tarsal bone. He could always capture Lin's traces in the shortest time. Then, one group after another began to encircle and kill them. But to Lin Sun, they were like groups of prey that came to him. He would take care of the powerful emperors. As for those quasi-emperors, Lin Sun would deal with them. Unfortunately, from the beginning to the end, Lin Sun didn't meet many worthy opponents. From the beginning, when Battle Emperor Qingyuan and his party fell to the next period of time, the news couldn't be hidden at all. Like a tide, the news spread out in waves and was learned by the various forces that were hunting Lin Sun. Battle Emperor Qingyuan and his party have fallen. Sword Emperor of Chaos and his party have also been defeated. Outside Se Mountain, the corpses of Battle Emperor Fengdu and his party have been found. Sword Emperor Feng Sun and his party of the Heaven Ghost Battle Clan have been missing for many days. There's no news from them. It's suspected that they've met with misfortune. All kinds of news came like flying snowflakes. Every piece of news was shocking. For a moment, countless experts felt a chill in their hearts and countless emperors trembled. For the sake of hunting Lin Sun this time, the ancient powers of the universe, chaos, and Panvis Tao courts in the Central Plains had joined forces with the 10 war clans and the primeval imperial clans to move out together with them for the sake of hunting Lin Sun. It could be said to be an extremely powerful lineup. According to the statistics, there were nearly 20 Emperor Realm cultivators that had been dispatched. The weakest of the other experts who participated in the hunt were quasi-emperors. There were so many of them that they could run amok on the starry ancient path without fear. They had thought that the opponent was just a peak quasi-emperor and that he wouldn't be able to cause much trouble even if he died. But now, after more than 10 days of pursuit, they had repeatedly suffered setbacks and even emperors had fallen one after another. How could they not be shocked? Emperors were supreme beings that could intimidate all heavens. In the countless years since the end of the Tao battle of ancient emperors, there had been almost no news of emperors dying. But after that game of chess, those high and mighty Emperor Realm experts, whom they could only look up to, fell from the sky like comets. This had already caused all the heavens to fall into an upheaval, and it caused a great uproar that affected the world. Who could have imagined that after the game of chess that covered the heavens came to an end, a bloody incident of emperors falling like rain would occur while they were merely pursuing a survivor of Mount Heart and Heart? The most unacceptable thing was that the one who killed those emperors was a young man who was only a peak quasi-emperor. Only now did those great powers realize that the target they were hunting this time had become extremely difficult to deal with. Everyone, be careful. This lad has a sword spirit with him that possesses shocking killing power. Those below the 3rd level of the martial emperor realm are no match for this sword spirit. Very soon, the matter of the sword spirit was finally made known to everyone. The martial emperors couldn't help but gasp. He was only a sword spirit, but he already possessed the power of a martial emperor? Just the thought of it made their hearts tremble. This must be a life-saving technique that the remnants of Fangsuan Mountain left behind for this lad before they left. Quick, ask for reinforcements. In my opinion, only experts above the 5th level of the martial emperor realm can suppress the sword spirit's arrogance. But most of those great figures have already stepped onto the path to head to the other side of the starry sky, and only those great figures that remain have to hold down the fort within the sect. So, how could they possibly be easy to invite? We have to ask for help even if we can't. After causing such a huge commotion, if we still can't kill this little bastard, how will the entire starry ancient path look at us? The major forces that were hunting Lin soon had a close discussion and finally made a decision. They would ask for help from the sects behind them to kill the sword spirit by Lin Sun's side. The sword spirit? In a cold and dark underground cave in the Panwu Dao court, a skinny man suddenly opened his eyes. His gaze was like a dazzling heavenly sword that illuminated the dark cave. An old servant beside him said respectfully, "Yes, it is said that the sword spirit is extremely ferocious. Those below the third level of the martial emperor realm are no match for him. If it wasn't for him, that little bastard surnamed Lin would have been." Before he could finish, the skinny man interrupted him. "I only care about the sword spirit." As he spoke, he stood up. In an instant, it was as if a divine sword that had been silent for thousands of years had revealed its sharpness in the darkness. A terrifying aura pervaded the air, causing the old servant to squat on the ground and almost suffocate. "Tell me the whereabouts of the sword spirit." The skinny man walked out. "Yes," the old servant replied with a trembling voice. On this day, the Ice-Devourer Sword Emperor that had been in closed-door cultivation in the Panwu Dao court for 39,000 years walked out from the underground cave with the intention of capturing the sword spirit for his own use. When they heard this news, all the forces that were hunting Lin soon heaved a sigh of relief and looked forward to it. The Ice-Devourer Sword Emperor was a terrifying existence that had attained the 6th level of the martial emperor realm. His sword Dao was peerlessly powerful and mighty. When the Golden Heaven Court's sect master, Tai Shu Hong, found out about this news, he couldn't help but laugh with ridicule. The Ice-Devourer Sword Emperor was an extremely formidable figure indeed. However, he wasn't much stronger than many of the martial emperors that had participated in the game of sky covering, and he was even far inferior. Not to mention the disciples of Mount Innerheart, even the extreme demon sword emperor, Xia Xinglia, could easily suppress the Ice-Devourer Sword Emperor. It's all because there's no tiger in the mountain, so the monkey is king. Tai Shu Hong sighed and looked towards the depths of the starry sky. With the reappearance of the path to the other side of the starry sky, countless old antiques that had been dormant for a long time had left the starry sky ancient path, and countless martial emperors had embarked on the journey to the other side. Even in the Golden Heaven Court, there were originally 9 martial emperors, but now there were only 2 of them left. Compared to this, the other great forces must be the same. When those who had been trapped in the martial ancestor realm for many years saw the hope of breaking through, who would be willing to continue to stay on the starry sky ancient path. Tai Shu Hong also wanted to go to the other side of the starry sky, but he couldn't, because he was the sect master of the Golden Heaven Court. Tai Shu Hong knew that although there were many old fellows who had left, there were also many old fellows who had stayed. The reason was easy to guess. The sky of the starry sky ancient path had changed. In the future, the forces and structure of the world would be reshuffled, and it would depend on which great force could seize the opportunity. You guys, you're not doing this for revenge. It's obvious that you're doing this for the good fortune and opportunity of this boy. Tai Shu Hong revealed a playful look, as if he was ridiculing and sighing with emotion. The might of Mount Heart had shocked the entire starry sky ancient path a long time ago after the game of chess that covered the sky came to an end. On the other hand, Lin Sun possessed the inheritance of Mount Heart and controlled the fortune of becoming an emperor or ancestor. Whoever was able to capture him would be able to obtain unimaginable benefit. This was the reason why so many major forces were mobilized for this hunting mission. Otherwise, who would spend so much effort and mobilize so many martial emperors merely for the sake of venting their anger? Tai Shu Hong noticed all of this, and even though he felt slight disdain towards such actions, he didn't have any intention of joining in. At the bottom of it all, the reason the Golden Heaven Court was able to survive until now was firstly because its resources and reserves were sufficiently strong, and secondly because it had always pursued a neutral attitude since ancient times until now. However, Tai Shu Hong was slightly restless recently. Chapter 2142. Over a Canyon. Boom. The aura of battle pierced through the universe and shattered the clouds. Two figures intertwined, like two gods fighting. Looking closely, it was Lin Sun and Sword Emperor of Chaos. Sword Spirit Leaf was watching the battle. Seeing that Lin Sun was able to fight evenly with the seriously injured Sword Emperor of Chaos, Sword Spirit Leaf couldn't help but feel surprised. More than 10 days ago, Lin Sun was defeated again and was not a match for Sword Emperor of Chaos at all. But after more than 10 days, he was able to fight evenly with Sword Emperor of Chaos. This progress was simply amazing. It turns out that he is really abnormal, Sword Spirit Leaf murmured. It was undoubtedly incredible that a young man at the first level of Quasi-Emperor could fight against a real Emperor who had lived for a long time. Even if Sword Emperor of Chaos was injured and could only exert 20% of his peak strength, it was still amazing that Lin Sun could do this. If it was spread out, the world would be in an uproar. After all, the Emperor realm was like an insurmountable moat. From ancient times to the present, there had never been an example of a quasi-emperor going to cross realms to fight against an Emperor realm expert. But it was obvious that Lin Sun was creating this unprecedented miracle. Moreover, Sword Spirit Leaf could see that although the law of Quasi-Emperor that Lin Sun mastered was slightly flawed, it was almost close to the real law of Emperor Realm. Moreover, his cultivation was beyond imagination. With the tempering of himself in these more than 10 days of battle, his whole body had undergone a kind of rebirth. Sword Emperor of Chaos was like a sledgehammer, constantly hammering Lin Sun, the stubborn iron with the quality of a top quasi-emperor, to be tempered and sublimated to the extreme. Of course, Sword Spirit Leaf also saw that this kind of tempering was only suitable for Lin Sun. If it were other top quasi-emperors, they would have been destroyed long ago, let alone transformed. Boom. At the end of the fight, Lin Sun's spirit, chi, and spirit were boiling, which made his power rise to the extreme at once. In just a moment, Sword Emperor of Chaos was suppressed by Lin Sun and fell into a disadvantageous position. This scene not only shocked Sword Spirit Leaf, but also made Sword Emperor of Chaos widen his eyes in disbelief. It was shameful enough to be used as a practice target by a quasi-emperor, but now he was being suppressed by a quasi-emperor. This was enough to drive any Emperor realm expert crazy. In fact, the Chaos Sky Sword Emperor was almost crazy at this moment, and his eyes were red. During this period of time, he endured humiliation and endured hardship. Was it because he wanted to seize the opportunity to capture Lin Sun before he was knocked out? But now, before he was knocked out, he was suppressed by Lin Sun. How could he bear it? Seeing that the Chaos Void Sword Emperor was going all out, he did not hesitate to make a move. With a bang, the Chaotic Sky Sword Emperor, who was on the verge of insanity, was knocked unconscious again. His body fell stiffly, and his face was filled with grief and indignation. Lin Sun wanted to continue, but he also knew that if Sword Emperor of Chaos went all out, no matter how seriously injured he was, the power he could exert was not something he could resist at all. Letting out a long breath, Lin Sun turned and walked into the vast universe Arkansas. The first thing he did was to start digesting the comprehensions he obtained in the battle just now. Leaf carried the unconscious Chaos Sky Sword Emperor and silently followed. Lin Sun was very hard-working. Even if he already possessed heaven-defying combat strength, there was not a trace of arrogance or neglect. On the contrary, he became more and more diligent in his cultivation. Leaf couldn't help but admire him. In ancient times, those who achieved great things not only had extraordinary talent, but also had indomitable will. When Sword Emperor of Chaos woke up, his eyes were already dim and hollow. He suddenly found that even if he endured humiliation, it seemed that in the end, it was difficult to escape from the fate of becoming a living target. At this moment, Sword Emperor of Chaos suddenly heard Lin Sun's voice. "Leaf, help him heal." Sword Emperor of Chaos was stunned. This little thing was so hypocritical. He must be playing tricks. He sneered. "Young man, do you think you can make me feel grateful to you by playing some tricks? Don't even think about it." Lin Sun took out a rare and peerless medicine, handed it to Leaf, the sword spirit, and said, "Give it to him. After all, he is an Emperor Realm figure. He has been seriously injured and has sparred with me many times these days. It's worth it for me to do this." Sword Emperor of Chaos was stunned again. He felt a little strange in his heart. Did this boy really find his conscience? He was able to discern that the precious medicine was indeed rare to the extreme, and its value was shocking. If he was able to consume it, then the injuries in his body would surely be almost healed. But before Sword Emperor of Chaos could be happy, he heard Lin Sun added, "Don't help him recover all at once. Take your time. Well, let him recover to 30% of his peak combat strength." As he said, he stroked his chin and revealed a heartfelt smile. "In this way we can continue the sparring." Sword Emperor of Chaos was stunned for a moment. It turned out that this boy didn't find his conscience at all. The reason why he wanted to heal him was that he wanted to continue to use him as a living target. His face was as black as the bottom of a pot, and the blue veins on his forehead almost burst. He was so angry that he was trembling all over. This was too much. "Come on, open your mouth." The sword spirit Leaf came over. "I won't let you get what you want." Sword Emperor of Chaos roared and his eyes almost popped out of their sockets. But the next moment, he felt a sharp pain at the back of his head and passed out again. Leaf crushed the medicine and stuffed it into his mouth. Then he said, "To deal with this old thing, you have to use force. Otherwise, he won't listen to you at all." Lin Sun, even he felt that it was a bit rude to treat an Emperor Realm cultivator like this. When the chaotic Sky Sword Emperor woke up again, his expression was blank. There was nothing sadder than a dead heart. In the past 10 days, he felt like he had a nightmare. His dignity and pride were constantly humiliated and trampled on. Now he had no face to speak of. When Lin Sun sparred with him again, he didn't move at all. It seemed that he would do whatever Lin Sun wanted to do. Lin Sun couldn't help frowning. Had the old guy's state of mind collapsed? Otherwise, how could he become so indifferent? "It seems that it's time to change your opponent," Leaf said thoughtfully. "I thought that if the old guy cooperated a little, I would let him go in the end, but now it seems, really." Sword Emperor of Chaos, who was like a walking corpse, suddenly came to his senses, and a burning desire to survive appeared in his eyes. Leaf said indifferently, "How can we know if we don't try? At least there's still hope, isn't there?" Sword Emperor of Chaos's expression was uncertain. After a long time, he took a deep breath, as if he had made the most difficult decision in his life. He gritted his teeth and said, "Well, I'll believe you this time. Come on, don't you want to fight with me?" He stared at Lin Sun, full of fighting spirit. Lin Sun immediately smiled and gave Leaf a thumbs up. Leaf transmitted his voice. "This old guy doesn't seem to be unafraid of death at all. The reason why he is so fearless is that he is waiting for me to say this. Don't be deceived by him." Lin Sun transmitted his voice. "No matter what he thinks in his heart, in my eyes, he is still a living target." Saying this, he jumped up. "Yes, a living target," Leaf also laughed, which was rare. When he was completely not afraid of the Emperor Realm, with this state of mind, he could already prove the Emperor Realm. What Lin Sun lacked now was nothing more than a breakthrough in cultivation. Sword Emperor of Chaos, who could exert 30% of his combat power, immediately oppressed Lin Sun into a situation of repeated defeat. This was exactly what Lin Sun wanted to see. This kind of sparring and training at least proved that his own strength was undergoing rapid transformation. On the 19th day of the journey, in the evening, Ice-devouring Sword Emperor, who was as thin as firewood and had an extremely fierce aura, came. From a distance, he saw Sword Emperor of Chaos, who was fighting with Lin Sun. For a moment he felt dizzy. Since when could a peerless quasi-emperor compete with a real Sword Emperor? This unbelievable scene caused the Ice-devourer Sword Emperor to be unable to help but stop moving, and his gaze became slightly unfocused. I've only been in closed-door cultivation for 39,000 years, yet the young people in the outside world are already ferocious to such an extent? At the same time, Sword Emperor of Chaos also found Ice-devouring Sword Emperor. He was stunned at first, and then an unprecedented ecstasy surged in his heart. His savior finally came. As an Emperor Realm cultivator, how could he not know how powerful Ice-devouring Sword Emperor was? Ice-devouring! He opened his mouth and was about to shout, but there was a bang on his forehead. The familiar aura, the familiar strength, and the familiar feeling of dizziness all rushed over his body. Then, everything went black and he fell into a coma. Even the feeling of fainting had become incomparably familiar to him, that sword spirit. Ice-devouring Sword Emperor's eyes lit up and instantly locked on Leaf, who had knocked out Sword Emperor of Chaos. His cold eyes did not conceal his desire. Boom! The vital energy in his body swept out like tidewater and covered this expanse of the heavens and the earth, causing the nearby mountains and rivers to rumble and collapse and transform into powder. In a twinkling of an eye, everything here collapsed and the universe was in turmoil. This apocalyptic scene was merely caused by the aura emitted by the Ice-devouring Sword Emperor. The power of the 6th level of Emperor Realm was vividly demonstrated here. In contrast, Sword Emperor of Chaos, who was only at the 1st level of Emperor Realm, was completely insignificant. At this moment, Leaf also showed a dignified look and said, "If it was in ancient times, I could kill such an opponent without any effort, but now, nearly 100,000 years had passed, and Leaf, who was already badly injured, had lost his power over the years." But Leaf didn't explain and just said seriously, "I'll hold him back later. You run away first." Lin Sun's black eyes slightly narrowed. Leaf's words made him realize the seriousness of the problem. Run away? Is it possible? In the distance there was a burst of laughter. Groups of bright divine rainbows broke through the sky and turned into strong figures. There were many Emperor Realm cultivators among them. Chapter 2143. The Ice-devourer Sword Emperor was a powerful ally to those who were chasing after Lin Sun. With him around, they could suppress the ferocious sword spirit. If he wasn't around, no one would be stupid enough to court death. Therefore, when the Ice-devourer Sword Emperor appeared, they also appeared and surrounded the area, sealing off the area. The world was solemn and oppressive. The Ice-devourer Sword Emperor was here for the sword spirit Yi, while those cultivators were here to kill Lin Sun. To be more precise, they were here to seize Lin Sun's inheritance and fortune. However, for Lin Sun, the scene in front of him still couldn't make him change his expression. He was still calm and composed. From the beginning of this chase, Lin Sun had never been afraid, or rather, he was confident enough not to be afraid of anything. Therefore, he was either cultivating or sparring with the Chaos Sky Sword Emperor along the way. He never panicked or worried at all. Even when he was surrounded, he was still the same. However, it was very obvious that his enemies thought that he would not be able to escape. Sword Spirit Ye's expression was also unprecedentedly solemn and dignified. He said softly, "If you fight to your death, I can open a way for you. But from now on, you can only move forward by yourself." There was determination in his voice, but also a hint of reluctance. It seemed that he had gotten used to the days of traveling with Lin Sun. Lin Sun's heartstrings were inexplicably touched. He said, "Yi, listen to me. These people are not worth risking your life for." Yi was stunned. At this moment, the Ice Devourer's Sword Emperor said, "Come with me. One day your name will be known throughout the world." His eyes were burning as he stared at Yi, as if he had seen a rare treasure that he had been longing for a long time. A sword spirit that could kill an expert below the third level of the Emperor realm was too rare. It could even be said to be one of a kind. He was sure that if there was an old antique like the Sword Ancestor here, he would have an irrepressible desire to possess Yi. As for Lin Sun, he was completely ignored. A remnant of Mount Heart, a young man in the Quasi-Emperor realm, would have died countless times in that game of chess if not for someone's protection. Similarly, if it wasn't for the protection of the sword spirit, it would have been impossible for him to survive until now. Swoosh! What answered the ice-devouring Sword Emperor was Ye's sword. The sword Qi was like the sun that soared across the sky. It was brilliant and blazing, covering the sky, and was boundlessly terrifying. It was unknown how many experts felt their hair stand on end, shocked by the power of this sword. A few Emperor Realm experts found it hard to breathe, their expressions changing. Sure enough, this sword spirit was terrifyingly fierce. However, in the eyes of the ice-devouring Sword Emperor, the elegance of the sword made him even more determined to suppress Yi. It was inconceivable that a sword spirit could have such a peerless sword intent. It was completely beyond his imagination. Boom! Even though the ice-devouring Sword Emperor was thinking about it, his actions were not slow. He grabbed with his palm, and a wave of sword Qi condensed, turning into a bone-chilling sword formation that whistled out. The sword Qi was dense, flowing with the power of the supreme laws of the Emperor realm. The sword intent it emitted covered the tribulation with a layer of frost. Buzz! The sword that Yi slashed out was like a fish frozen in a layer of ice, stagnating in the void, and then collapsing inch by inch. On the other hand, the bone-piercingly cold sword formation enveloped Yi, and it was like a cage that descended from the heavens and sealed off all of Ye's paths of retreat. Ye's figure flickered and turned into wisps of illusory sword Qi, easily rushing out of the sword formation. Wonderful! The ice-devouring Sword Emperor couldn't help exclaiming, "Wonderful beyond words! Kill!" Battle Emperor Rui Yang and other cultivators of the major forces also launched a siege at this moment. Their target was Lin Sun. A sharp light flashed in Ye's eyes. Just as he was about to rescue Lin Sun, he was stopped by the ice-devouring Sword Emperor. "Your opponent is me." The ice-devouring Sword Emperor's eyes were blazing, as if he wanted to skin the sword spirit Yi alive. "Get lost!" He exuded a terrifying and monstrous sword intent, ready to fight desperately. Although Lin Sun's combat strength was incredible, he was only a Jushi quasi-emperor after all. How could he withstand the attack of the major forces? At this moment, Yi was really anxious. For countless years, Lin Sun was the only person who made him feel very familiar, although his memory had been severely damaged. But his feeling was still there. At that moment, Yi did something that no one expected. He resolutely gave up the opportunity to resist the attack of the ice-devouring Sword Emperor, turned around without hesitation, and rushed towards Lin Sun. So resolute. A trace of surprise flashed in the eyes of the ice-devouring Sword Emperor. The sword spirit had absolute loyalty to its master, which was what every Sword Emperor valued the most. But the ice-devouring Sword Emperor knew very well that the master of Yi could not be a Jushi quasi-emperor like Lin Sun. But at this moment Yi did this. When Lin Sun saw this scene, he couldn't help but be stunned, and his heart was in turmoil. Only then did he realize that he was so important to Yi that he didn't even care about his life. Boom! The world was in chaos. Everyone could see that even if Yi could help Lin Sun out, he was bound to be seriously injured by the attack of the ice-devouring Sword Emperor. This was like a dead knot that couldn't be solved. In other words, Yi really didn't care about his life. However, at this extremely dangerous moment, a soft sigh sounded. "He's not your master, why do you protect him with your life?" When the voice sounded, a dreamy light and shadow appeared and turned into a graceful and slender figure. She raised her hand. The sword spirit Yi, who was only 3 inches tall, fell into her palm. Similarly, when she raised her hand, the ice-devouring sword emperor flew back as if he had been hit by a mountain, and the void collapsed. When he stood still, he couldn't help but cough up a mouthful of blood. The experts from the major forces, whether they were Emperor Realm existences or other quasi-emperors, stopped at this moment, and their expressions changed abruptly. Who was it that pushed back the ice-devouring sword emperor with one blow? In the field, the illusory figure was graceful, and the surface of her body was intertwined with the law of divine chains of order. A rain of light fell like smoke and mist, making her look mysterious and aloof. This figure was naturally she. After she appeared, she looked at Yi in her palm as if she didn't exist, and said with a hint of sadness, "So you're just like me, a pitiful person." Yi looked at her in confusion. Lin Sun explained, "This is Senior Shi, I just told you not to risk your life. It's not worth it. Why didn't you listen?" There was a hint of reproach in her voice. Before Yi could speak, she turned her head and glanced at Lin Sun, saying, "You still know that you need my help?" There was a hint of bitterness in her voice. Lin Sun's face stiffened, and he felt a little embarrassed. In that game of chess, she was originally going to take action. However, who could have imagined that the senior brothers and sisters of Fangtsuan Mountain would arrive one after another? This caused she, who had been preparing to take action, to become a spectator once again. There was a hint of dissatisfaction in Shi's tone at this moment. It was probably because in recent years, he rarely took the initiative to ask Shi for help. Perhaps this made Shi feel uncomfortable. It was like when a young eagle spread its wings, it didn't need the old eagle to protect it like before. Such a subtle change in state of mind was difficult to describe with precise word. The ice-devouring sword emperor's expression was gloomy, and there was a hint of seriousness between his brows. The experts from the other factions were also bewildered, feeling a chill in their hearts. Shi's appearance gave them a bad premonition. Hence, even when she talked to Lin Sun as if there was no one else around, no one dared to act on their own. In fact, they even had the intention to retreat without killing. She looked at the sword spirit in his palm once again. His clear and cold voice had become much gentler, which was a rare sight. "Huh!" Yi felt a trace of doubt. He could keenly sense that this mysterious and unfathomable woman seemed to have a special kind of protection for him. "How about I help you kill that old fellow?" Shi's voice became even gentler. However, her words were filled with undisguised killing intent. The ice-devouring sword emperor snorted coldly, feeling nervous. He started to calculate his chances of winning if he went all out. Yi thought for a while and pointed at Lin Sun. "Not helping me, helping him. Also, I don't like others helping me." Lin Sun immediately felt warmth in his heart. He secretly made up his mind to do everything he could to help Yi heal in the future. However, she smiled coldly, "This fellow is putting on a strong front. He doesn't need help." This was the first time Lin Sun had seen Shi make sarcastic remarks about him. He was both shocked and surprised. Eventually, he smiled bitterly. Only now did he feel that she seemed to have changed. In the past, she was like a fairy, cold and aloof, almost emotionless. However, in the past few years, she seemed to have been exposed to the mortal world, revealing some subtle changes in her temper and emotions. Of course, this was a good thing. However, Lin Sun could only smile bitterly. She was grumbling that he had not asked her for help in the past few years when he encountered danger. This was clearly a different kind of concern. What else could he say? He did not ask you for help because he wanted to prove that he was strong enough. Now you are helping him. Yi thought for a while and said, Although I don't understand the relationship between the two of you, I know that only people who are bound by their emotions would do this." Lin Sun was stunned. She was also stunned. The two of them looked at each other, feeling uncomfortable all over. "As a sword spirit, what do you know about emotions?" She knocked Ye's head. "All right, I won't let the enemy wait for too long. I'll go kill him." As she spoke, she looked at the ice-devouring sword emperor in the distance. At this instant, she seemed as if she'd once again become that illusory and misty celestial maiden that was chilly like ice. At this moment, the ice-devouring sword emperor's hair stood on end. The confidence in his heart vanished. He only had one thought. Chapter 2144. Run. The further the better. In the eyes of the ice-devouring sword emperor, she was like a supreme ruler that controlled life and death. He couldn't help but tremble in fear. Swoosh. Almost out of a survival instinct, the ice-devouring sword emperor fled without hesitation. His speed was shockingly fast. She didn't chase after him. She stretched out a slender and fair hand and gently pinched the air. The ice-devouring sword emperor, who was in the midst of teleportation, was pinched out like a bug. He was horrified and struggled with all his might, but it was all in vain. Bang! Finally, as she exerted force, the ice-devouring sword emperor's body cracked inch by inch, like a bug being pinched to death. Blood splattered like a waterfall, dyeing the sky red. The ice-devouring sword emperor was a 6th-level emperor who had been in seclusion for 39,000 years. He managed to escape the chess match, but he couldn't escape the fate of death. All the experts who witnessed this scene sucked in a breath of cold air, and their hands and feet turned cold. She was too powerful. He could decide life and death with just a raise of his hand. There was a stifling silence. All the experts from the major forces were scared silly. Even the Emperor Realm cultivators were dumbfounded. They were already cautious enough this time. When they noticed that Lin Sun's leaf was extremely troublesome, they chose to ask for help without hesitation. They only calmed down when the ice-devouring sword emperor arrived. They thought that this grand pursuit was about to come to an end. But who would have thought that what welcomed them was a disaster? Other than the sword spirit leaf, there was an even more terrifying and despair-inducing supreme existence beside Lin Sun. "We know our wrongs. Please forgive us, fellow Taoists." One of the Emperor Realm cultivators spoke with a trembling voice. His face was filled with fear. It was embarrassing for an Emperor Realm cultivator to admit defeat. But who could care about that now? She could kill a 6th-level Emperor Realm cultivator with a raise of his hand. Wouldn't it be easy for him to kill all of them? "I finally have the chance to come out. How can you admit defeat?" Xi's eyes were cold. His words sent chills down everyone's spine. They had a bad premonition. Some Emperor Realm cultivators even chose to escape. "Go! Run!" For a time, the scene was chaotic, and the experts from the various forces fled in all directions like birds frightened by the mere twang of a bowstring. Just as Yezi was about to make a move, Lin Sun stopped her. "Let her vent her anger, or she will be suffocated. I can't hold it in any longer." In the distance, she suddenly looked at Lin Sun. His gaze was like a sharp blade, making Lin Sun feel cold on his back. He could not help but smile bitterly. Could it be that he was wrong? "I do need to vent my anger." As she spoke, he suddenly waved his sleeve, and rays of order laws whistled out like divine rainbows. When looked at from afar, it was like a spear of judgment that came from the heavens, and it transformed into an imposing might that blotted out the sky as it pierced through space and flashed towards the surroundings. Bang! Far away in the wilderness, a martial emperor was pierced through, his body turning into ashes in an instant. Boom! An undulating mountain range was cut in half. An emperor who was hiding in the mountains was also cut horizontally, his body torn into pieces. The group of quasi-emperors who were fleeing suddenly felt their vision darken as they were engulfed by the power of laws, their bodies and souls destroyed. On the other side, this series of killings took place almost instantaneously, and it was so fast that it was shocking to the world. No matter who the enemy was, no matter how high their cultivation was, and no matter where they escaped to, they were all killed almost at the same time. In short, when Xi's attack fell, between heaven and earth, all the experts from the major forces were slaughtered on the spot. Dense and scarlet-red blood tainted this expanse of mountains and rivers that had changed beyond recognition, and it was like a blood-colored purgatory had appeared in the world. Lin Sun was stunned, and the shock in his heart was like a raging sea. One blow killed all the enemies. If he had not seen that scene with his own eyes, he would not have believed it. Since when did martial emperors become so fragile? Yezi was startled and could not help looking at Xi, saying, "You are much more powerful than me." Xi raised his hand and held Yezi in his palm, carefully rubbing his little head with his fingertips, and said softly, "When you recover from your injury, you can also be as powerful." Then she looked at Lin Sun. "How do you feel?" Lin Sun said subconsciously, "Strong, incredibly strong." "How do you compare to your senior brothers and sisters?" These words jolted Lin Sun out of his shock. He looked at Xi. Her figure was graceful, and the rain of light flowed around her. She was like an ethereal and cold fairy. However, no matter how hard Lin Sun tried, he could not see her face clearly. Naturally, he could not see her expression. "We each have our own advantages." Lin Sun gave a vague answer. "Oh," she said, "from today onwards, I will be a live target to spar with you. This way, you will know who is stronger between me and your senior brothers and sisters." This was not a question, but a decision. Although Xi's voice was calm, it was unquestionable. Lin Sun suddenly had a bad feeling in his heart. He quickly said, "Senior, it's enough to have Sword Emperor of Chaos to practice with me." She frowned. "You think I am not as good as Chaos Sword Emperor?" Lin Sun shook his head. "How would I dare?" "It's just that," she interrupted. "You are just worried that I will be targeted by the Forbidden Order power? Don't worry, the so-called Nameless Supreme Emperor has already been defeated." Lin Sun was speechless. He increasingly felt that there was something wrong with Xi's enthusiasm. Lin Sun made a final struggle and said, "But I heard that the next Nameless Supreme Emperor is coming soon." She said indifferently, "Then let's wait for him to come." Lin Sun wanted to say something, but she interrupted. "It's decided. Go and collect the spoils first. I have something to say to Yezi." Lin Sun smiled bitterly. Xi's change made it hard for him to adapt. Lin Sun shook his head and walked into the distance. This time, Qiankuan, Untainted Land, Panwu, and the other major forces had sent a huge force. There were nearly 20 martial emperors. Up until now, Lin Sun had successively obtained extremely abundant spoils of war. There were all sorts of emperor artifacts, various divine materials, medicinal pills, rare treasures, and spiritual objects. Lin Sun couldn't help but gasp when he counted the trophies on the battlefield one by one. The harvest was huge. The treasures could be piled up into a small mountain, and none of them were ordinary. Thinking about it, the weakest of the enemies was at the Quasi-Emperor realm, and the stronger ones were at the Martial Emperor realm. How could the treasures they had be ordinary? This once again proved the unbreakable truth since ancient times. No one would be rich without a windfall. The news of Ice devouring Sword Emperor, Auspicious Sun Sword Emperor, and the other major forces experts being killed spread quickly. It was like a bloody storm that shook the entire Hongmeng world. How can a remnant of Mount Fangtsuan have such heaven-defying killing power? Someone's heart trembled. This time, those high and mighty major forces have suffered a huge setback. Do they really think that the disciples of Mount Fangtsuan are easy to bully? Someone gloated. Today's world is different. The entire starry sky ancient path will be reshuffled. If those major forces still think highly of themselves, they will only fall more miserably, someone sighed. The world had really changed. In the past, Qiankuan, Untainted Land, Panwu Taoist court and other forces were like supreme existences. No one dared to provoke or slander them. Even a random descendant of their sect would receive the respect of a myriad of stars surrounding the moon when they walked out. Yet now, along with the end of the game and the defeat of Imperial Exalt Nameless, the foundations of those great powers had suffered a heavy blow a long time ago. Their vitality was greatly damaged, and they were in a precarious situation. The power and influence they possessed in the past had fallen to rock bottom. At this time, the bad news that ice-devouring Sword Emperor and other experts of major forces had been killed came out, which made the momentum of those major forces even more declining. On this starry sky ancient path, is Lin Sun really invincible? Perhaps only Emperor Ancestor Realm existences can suppress this kid's arrogance. There were also many experts who had mixed feelings and sighed with emotion. When he learned this news, Taishu Hong of Black-Yellow Taoist Court was not surprised. Since those successors of Mount Fangsuan dared to leave Lin Sun alone, how could they not have prepared a life-saving means for him? Unfortunately, Taishu Hong also guessed wrong. According to the War Emperor and others, giving Lin Sun a life-saving means would only do more harm than good, which was not conducive to his future cultivation. Therefore, they didn't give Lin Sun any life-saving means. However, with the existence of Sword Spirit Leaf and Shi, Lin Sun didn't need these at all. 10 days later. The world was clear and the wind was gentle. In front of a green lake with willows, with a bang, a figure fell into the lake like a falling meteorite, splashing thousands of waves. When the figure had just emerged from the lake with great difficulty, a palm force had already struck him from afar, causing his entire body to sink once again. Is he all right? By the lake, Sword Spirit Leaf squatted on a green lotus leaf, looking worried. Don't worry, I have my own power. This world has been covered by my power. Even a flower, a grass, a sand, and a stone here will not be damaged. Beside her, she sat leisurely on the branch of a willow tree. Her figure was graceful and ethereal, and the bright light rain was flowing, making her look dreamy. Leaf couldn't help saying, I mean him, not those flowers and grass. She said casually, he is thick-skinned and has never been afraid of death, so he must be fine. After all, this time I acted as a live target to accompany him to practice. Bang! As she spoke, she raised her hand and pointed gently. Lin Sun, who struggled to get up from the lake, was pressed down again and fell into the water. A drowned chicken and a drowned dog are nothing more than this. Leaf couldn't bear to watch it anymore. Over the past 10 days, she would take the initiative to practice with Lin Sun almost every few hours. Every time, Lin Sun would be tortured to death, even begging for mercy. Even if Leaf was just a sword spirit and a spectator, he was still frightened after witnessing the blows Lin Sun suffered in the practice these days. Once a woman was strong enough, she would be a man's nightmare. Thanks to Blue Feather Breeze, Boss Fong, Bailing, and other children for their gifts. Chapter 2145. When this competition was over, Lin Sun was lying on the lake grass like a salted fish, his eyes hollow. He was a supreme emperor-to-be with an unimaginably strong foundation. The laws of emperor-to-be he mastered were almost the same as those of a real emperor realm expert. However, in the past few days, Xiao Chun had been beaten up like a salted fish every time he sparred with Shi. Every method he used to resist was futile. What was despair? Lin Sun finally realized it. It was not until a long time later that Lin Sun recovered from the feeling of powerlessness and numbness. Yi had already rushed to Lin Sun. She broke off a handful of precious herbs and stuffed them into Lin's mouth. Lin Sun's physical strength was already on the verge of exhaustion. He didn't even have the strength to lift his fingers. Senior, this kind of competition is almost over, right? After a long time, feeling the new power emerging in his body, Lin Sun turned his head with difficulty and looked at Shi sitting on the willow branch. Well, what's the hurry? When the new nameless Supreme Emperor comes, the competition will end. Shi's voice was indifferent. Lin Sun's eyes darkened. If the new nameless Supreme Emperor didn't come, wouldn't he be ravaged, tortured, and destroyed like this in the future? Lin Sun, you've broken through, Yi suddenly said with a hint of amazement. Lin Sun was stunned. He couldn't help feeling the wonderful changes that were taking place in his body. Just like this. I broke through? His eyes were in a trance again. Last time, before he broke through and stepped into the peak of Emperor-to-be, he experienced a rare bloody killing in front of the Gate of Ruin. Finally, he released all his strength at the risk of serious injuries and finally entered the Gate of Ruin. That time, he broke through in a coma. Now, only a little more than a month had passed since the last time, but his cultivation changed again, and he stepped into the second level of the Supreme Emperor-to-be. Such a rapid and unparalleled speed of advancement was so shocking that even Lin Sun himself felt it was incredible. 10 days ago, you sparred with the Chaos Sword Emperor a total of 19 times. The first 15 times ended in defeat. After the 15th time, you started to turn the tables and gained the strength to suppress the Chaos Sword Emperor. However, after the Chaos Void Sword Emperor unleashed 30% of his combat strength, you were once again suppressed and defeated. Even though this sort of spar causes you to lose repeatedly, it allows you to obtain extreme tempering in battle, and your cultivation and combat strength have obtained unprecedented consolidation and transformation. During these 10 days, she sparred with you 10 times. Each time, he forced you to use everything you had, squeezing out all your strength before stopping. This just happens to be like rebirth time after time, and it allows your strength to undergo a transformation that's akin to joy after extreme misfortune. At this point, Yi said in admiration, what's rare is that Shi's strength is just right every time he attacks. If he's slightly stronger, he'll damage your Dao foundation, and if he's slightly weaker, you won't be able to unleash your full potential. Such methods can be said to be exquisite to the extreme. Lin Sun was stunned. Now that you mention it, do I have to be grateful? Yi said seriously, it's only been about a month, and your cultivation has made a breakthrough. If it were other practitioners, they would have been so happy that they would have kowtowed to you. Feeling the constant transformation in his body, Lin Sun felt strange in his heart. Was it for his own good that he had been abused for so many days? Was it really not just to vent his anger in the name of sparring? Yi said, of course, during this period of time, you've consumed a total of 76 kinds of peerless treasures, each of which is invaluable. Ordinary emperors don't have the luck to enjoy them. Fortunately, you're well off. Otherwise, it would be difficult for you to make a breakthrough in such a short time. Today, Lin Sun was indeed rich. The spoils of war that he had plundered during this period of time could be described as massive and innumerable. It should be known that in the forbidden area of ancient immortals, he also obtained a lot of spoils of war, including some treasures that even emperors coveted. Therefore, even if he knew that he had consumed so many peerless treasures, he didn't feel distressed. At this moment, he had completely recovered. He sat cross-legged in meditation to consolidate the new power he had after the breakthrough. After hesitating for a moment, Yi said, so, I suggest that we continue the sparring. Lin Sun's lips twitched fiercely. The last 10 days were simply like a nightmare. It wasn't just his body that was suppressed, even his state of mind and soul were suffering strikes of despair and powerlessness at all times. Even Lin Sun, who had a tough temperament, couldn't bear that kind of feeling. But when he thought that this kind of sparring could make his cultivation transform in the shortest time, Lin Sun hesitated for a moment and then gritted his teeth and agreed. He couldn't help admiring in his heart, sure enough, he likes to be abused to practice. She glanced at Lin Sun and said, since you've made a breakthrough, I'll increase my strength in the sparring. You should be prepared. Lin Sun's heart thumped and he couldn't help asking, Senior, how much of your strength did you use when we sparred before? How much? Shi's voice was a little strange. Yi thought for a moment and said seriously, According to my speculation, it should be far less than 10% Lin Sun, fog state. As one of the 49 prefectures in the primordial world, the fog spirit state's territory was neither the largest nor the smallest. The cultivation forces in the fog spirit state were neither the strongest nor the weakest. In short, fog state was very ordinary. It was neither outstanding nor inferior to other states in any aspect. It was very mediocre. Shinji Daoist sect was located in fog state. It had a very old foundation, but its power could only rank among the top 10 in fog state. After more than 10 days, Lin Sun arrived at fog state smoothly and came to the blessed land where Shinji Daoist sect was located, Tong Mountain. But when Lin Sun arrived, he suddenly found that there was no one in this famous blessed land in fog state. Moreover, the gate of Shinji Daoist sect was open, and the formation covering the mountain stopped working. When he walked in, he saw that the row upon row of ancient buildings were empty, and there were signs of disorder everywhere. Lin Sun searched for a long time and almost searched the inside and outside of Shinji Daoist sect. Finally, he confirmed that all the cultivators of Shinji Daoist sect should have evacuated from Tong Mountain. They were obviously in a hurry when they left. They didn't even have time to clean up some magic herbs in the herb garden. There was no trace of fighting in the field, which could only prove that the cultivators of Shinji Daoist sect had evacuated voluntarily. As for the reason, Lin Sun couldn't guess. This is troublesome, Lin Sun frowned. At this time, he was standing in front of a desolate ancient palace alone. The setting sun cast a long shadow on the mottled bluestone slabs. Shinji Pavilion and Shinji Daoist sect had the same origin. Lin Sun came here to inquire about some matters about going to the true dragon world. But he didn't expect that such an ancient force would disappear in such a strange way, leaving only an empty Tong Mountain. The evacuation of a sect will definitely cause a big commotion. There will definitely be some signs beforehand. Lin Sun muttered to himself. He planned to go to the nearest city to Tong Mountain and inquire about it. But just as he was about to leave, his heart suddenly trembled. He felt a fatal and dangerous aura. Almost at the same time, she appeared quietly. She gently picked him up and brought him to the eaves of a distant palace. A powerful person has appeared. Don't speak. She's body was surrounded by a rain of light, which turned into a mysterious power that covered her and Lin Sun. It was as if the two of them had disappeared into thin air. Whoosh, there was a fluctuation in the void in front of the palace where Lin Sun had been standing. Several figures appeared. There were men and women. Although their auras had been restrained, they still carried a formless and terrifying aura. They stood under the afterglow of the setting sun like gods standing in the dusk. Lin Sun's pupils suddenly shrank when he saw the figure in the lead. The memories that had been dormant in his heart for many years were awakened. The person in the lead was a woman in a purple robe. She was extremely slender and had a golden ribbon around her slender waist. Her long purple hair hung down like a waterfall and glowed with an enchanting luster. She carried a spear on her back. Her purple robe and purple hair made her look like a natural moat. People could only look up to her. Facing her figure was like an ant looking up at the sky. It's the woman in purple who chased after Master Lu. Lin Sun was shocked. How could he forget this woman? Years ago, he had returned to the mortal world and returned to the courtyard where he used to live in Feiyun village. It was also there that he accidentally saw a wisp of willpower left by Master Lu. It was also this wisp of willpower that allowed Lin Sun to see the woman in purple who chased after Master Lu. It also let Lin Sun know that the woman in purple came from the other side of the starry sky to hunt down his mother Luo Qingxuan and Master Lu. However, Lin Sun had never expected to see this woman in purple in the empty Shinji Taoist sect. It was inconceivable. I want to go to the world of True Dragon, but the sect that knows the way to the world of True Dragon has disappeared overnight. In front of the palace, the woman in purple spoke. Her voice was very pleasant, but it was cold and indifferent. The 3 men who were following her were trembling, and expressions of fear and panic appeared on their faces. Senior, we didn't leak any information. Even we don't know why all the people of Shinji Taoist sect disappeared. Please don't misunderstand. A white-haired old man explained anxiously. The woman in purple patted the old man's shoulder and said, I don't care about misunderstandings. I only care about why this happened. Do you understand? Chapter 2146. In the distance, Lin Sun's pupils suddenly narrowed. The white-haired old man was clearly a true Emperor Realm cultivator. But in the blink of an eye, he was annihilated. The most terrifying thing was that the purple-clothed woman had merely patted the old man's shoulder from the beginning to the end. It was so casual, but the more it was so, the more chilling it was. Just like the white-haired old man, the remaining 2 were also Emperor Realm cultivators. When they witnessed this scene, their faces turned pale and were filled with fear. Go find out the whereabouts of the powerhouses of the Divine Mechanism Taoist sect. Give me 7 days. After 7 days, I need clues to head to the true dragon world. The purple-clothed woman looked at a gray-robed middle-aged man. You can try to escape, but your clan and friends will be buried with you. Yes. The gray-robed middle-aged man's expression was uncertain. He gritted his teeth and left. Before the purple-clothed woman could speak, the man in luxurious clothes said quickly, Senior, I've already found out that Lin Sun, the survivor of Mount Fangsuan, doesn't belong to this world. He's from the ancient Desolation realm. The purple-clothed woman said. Obviously, she was not satisfied with such a simple answer. The man in luxurious clothes' heart trembled, and he said quickly, Lin Sun once caused a ruckus in the Kunlun ruins. But before that, there was no such person on the starry ancient path. Moreover, I once asked a friend from the Hidden Land realm, and he said that Lin Sun once cultivated in the ancient Desolation realm. In the distance, a trace of gloominess appeared on Lin Sun's face. This purple-clothed woman was actually trying to find out something related to him. Didn't this mean that it was very likely that she had already found out about his identity? As expected, when the man in luxurious clothes finished speaking, the purple-clothed woman said, So, this survivor is really that bitch's flesh and blood. There was a trace of rare excitement in her voice, like a beast that had its eyes on its prey. Where is he? The purple-clothed woman asked. A while ago, he was chased by all the major forces in the Central Plains. The man in luxurious clothes answered without hesitation. Obviously, he was prepared. He told her about the incident that happened a while ago. They're all dead. When she found out about the final outcome of this pursuit, the violet-clothed woman couldn't help but be stunned, and then she revealed a contemplative expression. Yes, according to the analysis of the outside world, Lin Sun should have a lot of life-saving trump cards in his hands. Ordinary emperors are no match for him. Then do you know where he is now? The purple-clothed woman said. The well-dressed man shook his head. Since the failure of the hunt, no one knows the news about Lin Sun. No one knows where he went. The purple-clothed woman fell into deep thought. After a long time, she said, Go and find out where this child is. I want a satisfactory answer in 7 days. The well-dressed man said in a trembling voice, What if I can't find anything? The purple-clothed woman glanced at him but didn't say anything. However, the well-dressed man had already realized the terrifying consequences. His expression was gloomy, and only after a long time did he speak bitterly. He agreed, turned around, and left. The purple-robed woman was the only one left in front of the ancient palace. Whoosh! An illusory figure suddenly condensed on her shoulder. It was only a foot tall, and it was covered in a black forbidden aura. Its appearance was extremely vague. When she, who had been watching coldly, saw this person, his eyes couldn't help but narrow. Star Spill, do you still care about a useless remnant of Mount Heart at a time like this? The illusory figure roared, Hurry up and take me away. Return to the clan. Otherwise, this seat will completely perish. He seemed extremely irritable and angry. However, the purple-clothed woman called Star Spill said calmly, "Ninth Granduncle, your cultivation and original body have long been killed by the Battle Emperor. If I hadn't saved you, your extremely weak remnant soul wouldn't have been able to survive." After a pause she continued, "Moreover, even if I take you back to the clan now, with the clan's power, it's impossible for you to recover." "Star Spill! How dare you curse me?" The blurry figure roared furiously. "If it wasn't for me back then, how could a little slut like you have leaped through the Dragon's Gate and been valued by the clan leader?" Star Spill was expressionless. "Ninth Granduncle, a loose tongue can cause trouble. You should calm down and think about your current situation. Those people in the clan probably already think that you're completely dead. Tell me, if I accidentally erase your remnant soul, what kind of punishment will I suffer?" The blurry figure immediately fell silent. "Ninth Granduncle, in the primordial era, I received orders to come to this ancient path. Until now, I still haven't completed the mission. Do you think I don't want to return to the clan?" Star Spill said to himself. "You know better than anyone else that if I don't complete the mission, even if I return, what awaits me is the harshest punishment." The blurry figure's voice was hoarse. "What exactly do you want to do? You don't need to understand. You just need to follow me." Star Spill's voice was indifferent. "If I'm not wrong, in another month or so, a big shot like you will come to this ancient path and regain control of the forbidden power of order that covers the heavens. At that time, it will be time to pull in the net." The next moment, she and the blurry figure disappeared. Only the setting sun shone on the boundless world. Rows upon rows of ancient buildings were empty, desolate, and quiet. Lin Sun saw all of this. His heart was in turmoil, and he couldn't calm down. He was sure that the clan that his mother, Luo Qingxuan, and the others had to escape from on the other side of the starry sky a long time ago was from this purple-clothed woman called Star Spill's clan. She suddenly asked, "Do you know who that remnant soul was?" Being reminded, Lin Sun realized something. He was startled and said, "Could it be the nameless Supreme Sovereign?" "Yes, it's him," she said coldly. She's voice was cold. "In the ancient Desolation Realm, every time I walked out of the heaven accessing place, I was attacked by the forbidden power of order controlled by this person. I didn't expect that he would leave a remnant soul after being killed by your eldest senior brother." Lin Sun's expression changed. The murderer who chased after his mother, Luo Qingxuan, and the others came from the same clan as the Nameless Supreme Sovereign, and called the Nameless Supreme Sovereign the Ninth Granduncle. For a moment, Lin Sun thought of many things in the past. According to that woman, a new Nameless Supreme Sovereign will appear in a month. She's voice was rare with a trace of seriousness. A month. The ancient path of the starry sky would be covered by the shadow of the forbidden power of order again. What kind of upheaval would happen at that time? There was no doubt that the new Nameless Supreme Sovereign would definitely avenge the Ninth Granduncle, and it was very likely that his target would fall on Lin Sun. As early as in primitive times, the woman called Star Spill came to kill my mother and Master Lu. She came to Shinji Taoist sect to go to the true dragon world. Does this mean that my mother and Master Lu are very likely to be in the true dragon world? Lin Sun suddenly said. She said, "It's possible. But I think that if she knows your whereabouts, she will definitely give up the plan to go to the true dragon world and come to deal with you." Lin Sun's black eyes flickered. He knew that she was right. When he saw the scenes created by the imprint of will left by Lu Boya, Lin Sun knew that he, who possessed the complete devouring spirit vein of the Great Abyss, was the most urgent target of Star Spill. Taking a deep breath, Lin Sun said, "Senior, I plan to find the practitioners of Shinji Taoist sect. If I can rush to the true dragon world before Star Spill, I may be able to resolve some of the disasters." She nodded. She had been guarding the heaven accessing place for countless years. She had seen Lu Boya and the terrifying willpower left by Luo Tongtian, the master of sky reaching. Of course, she knew Lin Sun's identity and origin better than anyone else. On this day, Lin Sun and she walked along Tong Mountain to the nearby cities, making inquiries along the way. To Lin Sun's surprise, no matter how he inquired, no one knew what had happened to an ancient orthodoxy like Shinji Taoist sect. Naturally, no one knew where the successors of Shinji Taoist sect had gone. Unknowingly, 7 days had passed. Lin Sun still found nothing. This made him realize that Shinji Taoist sect must have sensed danger in advance. That was why they had disappeared without anyone noticing. Lin Sun and she returned to Tong Mountain again. Unlike 7 days ago, the empty mountain gate of Shinji Taoist sect was already filled with the figures of countless practitioners. It was as if they had entered a treasure house and were searching everywhere for the treasures left behind in this blessed land. After all, Shinji Taoist sect had completely disappeared. The place where they occupied was a top-notch blessed land in the world. Many practitioners would definitely target it. It was even to the extent that there was no lack of powers that intended to occupy this famed mountain paradise by force, and they were eager to make a move. I wonder if Star Spill has found the successor of Shinji Taoist sect. Seeing this scene, Lin Sun frowned. He realized that it was impossible for the Star Destroyer to appear here again. After a long time, Lin Sun shook his head and turned to leave. On the way, he thought of something. In about half a month, a new Supreme Venerable Nameless would appear. He would definitely use all means to deal with him. You can expose your tracks and let Star Spill know. In this way, she will definitely not go to Zhenlong World again. You also don't have to worry about your loved ones, she suddenly said. However, in this way you will be targeted by Star Spill. That is equivalent to drawing a fatal calamity to yourself. Lin Sun was stunned, and his eyes gradually brightened. She said, "If I only face Star Spill, I am confident of winning. However, if a new Supreme Venerable Nameless appears, it will be troublesome. You should know that once the new Supreme Venerable Nameless appears, he will definitely not let you off." Lin Sun took a deep breath. A hint of determination flashed in his eyes. "Senior, don't worry. Let's do it." Chapter 2147. It's been 7 days, yet you haven't found a single clue. Don't you think that's very embarrassing? Yan Xing's eyes were indifferent as he stood at the peak of a lone mountain, and his purple hair fluttered in the wind. The gray-robed middle-aged man was terrified to the point of kneeling on the ground, and his face was ghastly pale. During these 7 days of time, he'd exhausted all means to investigate. However, never had he imagined that those cultivators of the divine secret Tao sect would simply seem as if they'd evaporated into thin air. They'd vanished without a trace, and they didn't even leave behind a trace. "Senior, give me a little more time. I'll definitely find those disciples of the divine mystery Taoist sect." The gray-robed middle-aged man gritted his teeth. Yan Xing glanced at him and said, "Do you think the divine mystery Taoist sect has noticed something, and that's why they chose to hide in advance?" The gray-robed middle-aged man said without the slightest hesitation, "It must be so. Otherwise, how could such a large sect that has existed for countless years vanish without a trace overnight?" Yan Xing said, "Then tell me, besides the divine mystery Taoist sect, which other power in the primordial world knows the way to the true dragon world?" The gray-robed middle-aged man shook his head. Since ancient times, the divine mystery Taoist sect has been like the gatekeeper of the true dragon world. No matter which great power wants to contact the true dragon world, they can only go through the divine mystery Taoist sect. Right at this moment, space fluctuated, and then the figure of the man in luxurious clothes appeared. "Senior Lin Sun has appeared," he reported excitedly. "Just last night, Lin Sun appeared in the underground world of Black River City and inquired of the hidden mist Taoist sect about heading to the dark world." Lin Sun. A wisp of light flashed through Yan Xing's eyes like lightning. "Is he heading to the dark world?" "It should be so," the man in luxurious clothes said without hesitation. It should be? Yen Xing glanced at him. The man in luxurious clothes trembled in his heart and waved his sleeve, causing a figure to roll to the ground. Senior, this is the person in charge of the Hidden Mist Taoist sect in Black River City. He saw Lin Sun appear with his own eyes. If you don't believe me, you can ask him. The figure on the ground was a dignified middle-aged man in embroidered clothes and a marten fur coat. But at this moment, he was scared out of his wits and panicked. Look at me. Yen Xing looked down, a strange purple light flashing in his eyes. When the brocade-robed middle-aged man's eyes met his, he immediately felt a tearing pain in his soul, as if a large hand had ruthlessly stabbed into his soul and was constantly twisting it. At the same time, Yen Xing saw various scenes. In the Black River City, Lin Sun entered the underground world. Under the guidance of a waiter, he met the person in charge and was then led into a quiet room. After a long while, Yen Xing raised his head, and the strange purple light in his eyes had disappeared. She said thoughtfully, "Could it be that this guy has also sensed some danger and is planning to hide in the dark world?" On the ground, the middle-aged man in luxurious clothes was completely drenched in cold sweat while blood ceaselessly flowed from his lips. He gasped rapidly for breath as he said, Do I still have a chance to survive?" The gray-robed middle-aged man and the finely dressed man both looked at Yen Xing. "I am fair in my rewards and punishments. Although you were captured, you did me a favor. I will give you a chance to live." Yen Xing waved his hand and the middle-aged man was taken away by a terrifying force and disappeared. "There is not much time left. Since you can't find the way to the real dragon realm, you will go to the dark world with me." Yen Xing made a decision. Yen Xing firmly remembered Lin Sun's appearance, breath, and charm from the memory extracted from the middle-aged man in luxurious clothes. A realm ship took off from the Hongmeng Great World. After moving in the fixed starry lane for half a month, it gradually left the original route and sailed into the depths of the chaotic starry sky. The stars were like disorderly and desolate weeds that stretched throughout the void of the universe, and some terrifying natural disasters could be seen occurring repeatedly throughout the universe. There were void faults across, like a bloody mouth that swallowed the starry sky. There were beautiful and colorful streamers, like thin gauze fluttering in the air, but they could easily erode the stars. There were space-time storms roaring, emitting a violent power that was enough to make the Emperor realm tremble. It swept through the void and made endless roaring sounds. Those terrifying scenes were simply capable of causing the hearts of any cultivator to palpitate with fear. But this realm ship shuttled skillfully. Every time it encountered some terrible disasters, it could always avoid them. Obviously, although this starry sky was chaotic and dangerous, the realm ship was driven by a veteran. This realm ship was extremely large, like a floating land, belonging to the Hidden Mist sect. Their goal this time was to go to the dark world. The realm ship was divided into 3 areas. In the uppermost area, there were quiet courtyards full of spiritual chi scattered like stars in the sky. Only the most distinguished guests could stay there. In front of one of the courtyards, a servant respectfully knocked on the door 3 times, stepped back a little, and bowed. "Senior, the realm ship has sailed into the most dangerous and turbulent dark night starfield. There may be some bumps and dangers along the way. I'm here to inform you. Don't worry about it." The messenger was a middle-aged man with gray hair and a gray beard. His breath was strong, and he was a Saint King realm master. But at this time, he looked very respectful. "Thank you for reminding me. I know." A voice as calm as water rang out in the courtyard. The middle-aged man hurriedly said, "Senior, don't be so polite. This is what I should do." Soon, the middle-aged man said goodbye and left. The courtyard was covered in luxuriant plants and ancient trees. Within an elegant room, a tall and extraordinary figure sat casually. He wore moon-white clothes, had long hair that hung loosely on his shoulders, and revealed a handsome appearance. It was Lin Sun. Half a month ago, He went to a place called the Black River City and found the Hidden Mist sect in the underground world to inquire about the news related to the Dark World. Then he took the realm ship of the Hidden Mist sect to the Dark World. With Yen Xing's ability, I'm afraid she has already known that I'm going to the Dark World. But I don't know if she has caught up with me. In the room, Lin Sun showed a thoughtful expression. There had been a saying on the ancient path of starry sky that if the whole world was an enemy, there was no way to retreat. The Dark World was the last way to survive. However, this time, Lin Sun was not forced to flee. He took the initiative to come here. On the one hand, he wanted to attract the attention of Yen Xing, the woman in purple, and make her change her action to the realm of True Dragon. On the other hand, Lin Sun did have something to do. When the golden cicada youth left, he gave him a letter with a sentence on it. In the Dark World, someone is waiting for you to untie the bell. With the identity of the golden cicada youth, there must be a deep meaning for him to leave such a sentence before going to the other side of the starry sky. Lin Sun, who had given up going to the realm of True Dragon, naturally thought of going to the Dark World to see who on earth needed him, the one who started the bell, to untie the bell. Now he was targeted by Yen Xing, the woman in purple. With she, Lin Sun was not afraid of anything. But Lin Sun had to consider one thing. When the new nameless emperor appeared and wanted to deal with him by all means, how could he resist? It was impossible to rely on she alone. However, when Ruosu left, she said that the second successor of the Fangtsuan Mountain, who had never appeared and seemed extremely mysterious, was very likely to live in seclusion in the Dark World. This was why Lin Sun chose to go to the Dark World. While thinking, Lin Sun turned over his palm, and a small green crystal tree emerged. The texture of the trunk was like the natural trace of the great Tao, full of mysterious aura. The tender green and round leaves flowed down wisps of dreamy green clouds. This was the seedling of the Bodhi tree. Fortunately, although the Buzhou mountain is not here, there is this seedling of the Bodhi tree. If the forbidden power of order appears, it can come in handy. At least it should not be difficult to hide my aura. Lin Sun looked at the seedling of the Bodhi tree. With his current foundation, he was far from being able to compete with the forbidden power of order, let alone the new nameless emperor who was about to arrive. But with the seedling of the Bodhi tree, he could avoid the detection of the forbidden order that covered the sky. Crack, crack. There was a cracking sound on the table in front of Lin Sun. The originally mystical and sharp emperor's sword seemed to have lost all of its spirituality at that moment. It cracked inch by inch and turned into pieces. Next to it, an obscure rain of light flowed on the broken blade, reflecting a mysterious and unfathomable pattern of Tao. Next to the broken blade, the insignificant spiritual bow made of white bones also glowed with a magnificent brilliance, illuminating the whole room. I swallowed another emperor weapon. The corner of Lin Sun's mouth twitched imperceptibly. The spirit of the weapon, Wu Kei, was silent in the insignificant spiritual bow. He needed to refine the essence of many treasures to repair the injuries he had suffered in those countless years. Similarly, when the broken blade condensed 100 natal Tao patterns, Lin Sun noticed that there was an extremely terrifying existence dormant in the depths of the broken blade. That figure sat silently within the darkness. His hair was disheveled while numerous thumb-thick chains were coiled around his throat, legs, and waist, and they were suffused with obscure energy of order. When he opened his eyes in the darkness, it was like a light that could tear apart the night of eternity. It was extremely dazzling and sharp. The feeling that this figure gave off was like that of a god that sat in the darkness. With a single thought, he could destroy the heavens and earth. It was so terrifying that it was unimaginable. At that time, Lin Sun's cultivation was at the peak of the Great Saint realm, but the figure said, "If you want to completely refine my power, with your current strength, you're still far from it. Come again in the future." It was this sentence that made Lin Sun completely conclude that this figure was very likely to be the spirit of the broken blade. It was because of the scene of Wu Kei refining the essence of treasures to repair his vitality that Lin Sun had an idea. He also tried to use this method to improve the power of the broken blade. Who would have thought that it would actually come true? During this period of time, the broken blade, like the insignificant spiritual bow, constantly swallowed and absorbed the essence of emperor weapons. Its quality and power had obviously improved significantly. Chapter 2148. In the past, when Lin Sun was not rich, he could only take some ordinary holy treasures and let Wu Kei refine and absorb them. During those years, most of the spoils of war from every battle had been transformed into pills that could restore Wu Kei's vitality. But since the ancient immortal forbidden area, Lin Sun began to use emperor weapons as elixirs for Wu Kei as he obtained many emperor weapons. It could be said that he was rich and overbearing. If some emperor realm cultivators knew about this, they would scold him for wasting God's resources. After discovering that the broken blade's spirit couldn't resist the temptation of emperor weapons, the number of emperor weapons Lin Sun had began to decrease sharply. No matter how rich he was, he couldn't hold on for too long with Wu Kei and the broken blade's spirit, the two gluttons with fierce appetites. Now, Lin Sun had less than 20 emperor weapons that could be used as elixirs, except for the Tower of Endless, the 3,000 floating and sinking, the immeasurable saber, and the infinite bottle. Of course, 20 sovereign weapons was still an extremely shocking number, but Lin Sun began to worry about it. Wu Kei and the broken blade's spirit could devour the essence of an emperor weapon every 3 days or so. At this rate of consumption, these 20 emperor weapons would be completely consumed in less than 3 months. Without new emperor weapons, how could they satisfy the appetite of Wu Kei and the broken blade's spirit? Lin Sun also had some heavenly and earthly treasures, but Wu Kei and the broken blade's spirit didn't care about them at all. It was like a person who was used to eating delicacies from land to sea, fish, and meat would no longer be interested in plain food. What made Lin Sun most speechless was that neither Wu Kei nor the broken blade's spirit had changed at all after devouring so many emperor weapons. It was like throwing meat buns at a dog, but there was no return. However, according to Shi, the insignificant bow and the broken blade were extraordinary and were very likely to be the top treasures among the spiritual emperor weapons. Ordinary emperor weapons couldn't be compared with them at all. The essence of emperor weapons that Wu Kei and the broken blade's spirit had devoured was a kind of accumulation. When it reached a certain level, there would be a qualitative transformation. Of course, she also said that before the insignificant spiritual bow and the broken blade were completely restored, it was difficult to accurately determine the grade of their sovereign weapons. But he was sure that a monarch weapon with an artifact spirit was at least a spirit grade. It was also at this time that Lin Sun clearly understood the classification of imperial weapons. According to the difference in power and power, the sovereign weapons were divided into 3 grades and 9 ranks. The 3 grades were profound grade, spirit grade, and divine grade. Amongst them, profound grade emperor armaments implied that the treasure was profound and contained emperor Dao laws within it. Emperor Dao treasures were formed from emperor Dao markings, and they were divided into the upper, middle, and lower grades. With 9 emperor Dao treasure patterns, it could be considered a low-grade profound grade emperor artifact. This kind of monarch armament was one of the most commonly seen in the world. Most of the monarch weapons that Wu Kei and the broken blade spirit had devoured were at this level. With 49 inner emperor Dao treasure patterns, it could be considered a mid-grade profound grade emperor artifact. Be it in terms of strength or appearance, there was a clear difference between the mid-grade profound monarch armament and the mid-grade monarch armament. With 59 emperor Dao treasure patterns, it could be considered a high-grade profound grade emperor artifact. The high-grade emperor artifact was extremely precious. Most of them were controlled by the 6 Tao courts and the 10 battle clans, and each of them had a unique inheritance and origin. This was the 3rd grade of profound grade. Spirit-grade Emperor weapon implied that the monarch armament was psychic, which meant that it had a spirit and possessed extraordinary intelligence and wisdom. Spirit-grade Emperor weapons were also divided into 3 grades: upper, middle, and lower. Every rank had its own unique wonders. The spirit of a low-grade Emperor weapon could transform into a specific form, but it had to cooperate with the monarch armament to exert its full power in battle. Spirit-grade Emperor weapons had wisdom and could be controlled to fight with the monarch armament. Spirit-grade Emperor weapons had cultivation and could be separated from the monarch armament to fight alone. They could also cultivate. However, no matter which type of spirit-grade imperial armament it was, all of them were extremely rare and precious. Even colossi like the 6 great Tao courts possessed spirit-grade imperial armaments, and they could be counted on one's fingers. In this world, the birth of a spirit-grade Emperor weapon would definitely cause a sensation in the world, and countless cultivators would talk about it. It was worth mentioning that although natal saint treasures could also transform into spirit-grade Emperor weapons, they were completely different from profound-grade Emperor weapons. In the beginning, Lin Sun didn't know the origin of the broken blade, so he tempered it as a natal saint treasure. But when he discovered the existence of the broken blade spirit, he realized that this treasure was far from as simple as he had imagined. It was not comparable to a holy treasure at all. But now, he finally realized that the broken blade spirit was not only not a holy treasure, but also not an ordinary monarch armament. Divine-grade Emperor weapons were divine. This kind of monarch armament was more powerful and magical than spirit-grade Emperor weapons, but it was extremely rare, like a legend. There were several divine-grade Emperor weapons on the entire Starry Sky ancient path, and all of them were controlled by the 6 Tao courts. Generally speaking, such divine-grade Emperor weapons would not be used unless it was a life-and-death situation. It was said that divine-grade Emperor weapons, also known as Emperor's Path extreme weapons, had the power to collapse the sky and destroy a world. Knowing this, Lin Sun suddenly found that Wu Kei, the spirit of insignificance Bao, the spirit of broken blade, and the sword spirit of leaf, he had 3 imperial weapons at least of the spiritual grade. The reason why it was at least was that Wu Kei, the broken blade spirit, and leaf all had a serious problem. That was, they had been seriously injured, so that it was impossible to know their specific conditions before they recovered. In addition, he also had the Tower of Ceaseless, the 3,000 floating and sinking treasures, and many Kunlun Emperor weapons, which were not comparable to ordinary Emperor weapons. It was no exaggeration to say that the number of Emperor weapons owned by some powerful forces was not as many as that owned by Lin Sun. Putting away the sapling of the Bodhi tree, Lin Sun took out a mysterious grade lower rank Emperor weapon as an elixir for Wu Kei and the broken blade spirit to recover. Lin Sun asked, "Leaf, you really don't need my help?" Leaf was a sword spirit and also a device spirit. But unlike Wu Kei and the broken blade spirit, he was not interested in Emperor weapons. Leaf, who was quietly dormant in Lin Sun's hair, said, "My body has been destroyed for a long time, so I can't absorb the essence of Emperor weapons. If I want to recover, I can only rely on my own cultivation." Lin Sun asked with interest, "What kind of cultivation method does a device spirit practice?" It was inconceivable that a treasure could give birth to a spirit, have wisdom and life, and embark on the road of cultivation. Leaf said, "I was born of the Emperor Sword, so the Tao I seek is naturally related to Sword Tao. As for the cultivation inheritance, it was given by my master, called 8 Fierce Gods' Punishment." Lin Sun couldn't help asking, "Who is your master?" Leaf shook his head. "My memory has long been incomplete. I can't remember it anymore." His voice was low, with a trace of confusion. "He is the same as me." Shi's voice suddenly came out. "Maybe only when I recover completely can I regain my memory of the past." After a pause, she continued, "Yezi, although your body has been destroyed, if you want to recover from your injuries, Cultivation isn't the only way. As far as I know, the origin source chi can help you. Source chi. Lin Sun took a deep breath. This was the original power born at the beginning of the formation of chaos. It was mysterious and was regarded as a congenital divine object. In terms of rarity, it was no less than a divine-grade emperor weapon. It was just like an ethereal legend, and people only heard of it. At least on this starry ancient path, no one had heard of obtaining source chi. As expected, Leaf said, this kind of divine treasure can only be found by chance. I don't expect to find it. Although the speed of recovery is a little slow, for me it is like walking on the road of Tao again, and it will bring me a lot of benefits. Although Leaf didn't expect to get source chi, Lin Sun still firmly remembered it. Even if there was a glimmer of hope in the future, he would help Leaf find this thing. As time went by, a month had passed since they left the Hongmeng world. The boundary ship of the hidden mist house had already sailed into the depths of the dark night star zone. Along the way there were horrible natural disasters everywhere. Chaos, upheaval, danger filled every corner of this star field. This was the route to the dark world. According to the middle-aged man of the hidden mist house, in the dark world, only the three giants, the Divine Sunshine Ancient Sect, the Hidden Land Realm, and the Bronze Sparrow Tower, had mastered the ancient transmission formation that could be used to teleport between the stars. If others wanted to enter and exit the dark world, they could only take great risks and travel through this dangerous star zone called the Dark Night. If someone was not familiar with the way, even if he had the cultivation of the Emperor realm, he was very likely to get lost or suffer in this dangerous star zone. Knock, knock, knock. On this day, Lin Sun was meditating and refining his 5 viscera. Suddenly, there was a violent and hurried knock on the door, which seemed very rude. Lin Sun couldn't help frowning. This time, he took the ship as a distinguished guest. The courtyard he stayed in was located on the top floor of the boundary ship. Without permission, ordinary passengers couldn't get close at all. Knock, knock, knock. Lin Sun didn't intend to pay attention to it, but the knocking on the door was as dense as drumbeats, and he couldn't wait to smash the door of the courtyard. Logically speaking, the strongmen of the hidden mist house should be alarmed at this time and stop them, but this situation didn't happen. After thinking about it, Lin Sun stood up from meditation and went straight out. Without going out of the courtyard, Lin Sun's spiritual awareness had already sensed the scene outside the courtyard. A thin man in a fiery red crane cloak, surrounded by a group of retainers, stood outside the gate of the courtyard. The one who knocked on the door was one of the retainers, full of impatience. The middle-aged man of the hidden mist house, who was responsible for serving Lin Sun, was standing beside him at the moment. He was as silent as a cicada in winter, frowning and restless. When seeing such a scene, Lin Sun couldn't help but raise his eyebrows. Obviously, the thin man in the fiery red crane cloak had an extraordinary background. Even the middle-aged man had to bow his head under his oppression. But why did they come to him?